Chapter 30:19. A labyrinth existing in a void crack was already inconceivable. At this moment, there was actually a humanoid shadow inside the labyrinth, which was even more inconceivable. Who was this person? Or rather, who was the one who left this shadow behind? Yang Kai and Li Jiao both stared with wide eyes, but to their disappointment, no matter how hard they looked, they were unable to see the true face of this shadow, because this shadow seemed to have existed for many years, and although it was extremely powerful, it had been affected by this void crack for so many years, causing it to become somewhat unstable. The shadow was erratic, sometimes elongated, sometimes short, and sometimes round, as if it could collapse at any moment. However, for some reason, Yang Kai felt that this shadow was somewhat familiar, as if he had seen it somewhere before. "Brotherly, have you seen this person before?" Yang Kai asked in a low voice. Li Jiao shook his head and said, "I can't see it, but this person is definitely not weak." Although the shadow was unstable, the aura it occasionally emitted was extremely powerful, so it was obviously not an ordinary person from the Emperor realm. Yang Kai nodded, and the faces of the masters he had seen flashed through his mind, trying to confirm it with the shadow in front of him. But at this moment, the shadow suddenly expanded and shrank, turning into a fist-sized white ball of light that slowly floated in a certain direction. Yang Kai didn't have time to think about it, pulling Li Jiao and saying, "Follow it." Li Jiao was startled. "Follow him?" Yang Kai responded, feeling that the appearance of this shadow might be a turning point. He had been searching here for an entire month, but had been unable to leave this void labyrinth. So at this moment, he could only try his best and see what this ball of light was up to. Without any hesitation, he followed closely behind the ball of light. The ball of light's path was even more erratic than Yang Kai's previous one, and it was even more difficult to grasp. It seemed to be aimless, but if one observed carefully, there were traces to follow. Yang Kai secretly cheered up, feeling that his guess was correct. Now he just wanted to know who had left this shadow behind. So he had been observing the situation of the ball of light, but he hadn't made much of a discovery. The ball of light was produced by a shadow secret technique, and after being affected by the void for so many years, it had long since become unrecognizable. So it was extremely difficult for Yang Kai to trace it back to its source. After walking for several days, Li Jiao was already in despair. Yang Kai's heart was also pounding, and there were many times when he thought of giving up, but thinking that it would be a pity, so he could only clench his teeth. Li Jiao. At some point, the ball of light suddenly sped up and rushed in a certain direction. Seeing this, Yang Kai, when it reached a certain place in the void, the ball of light suddenly exploded without warning, turning into specks of fluorescent light and disappearing. Li Jiao was stunned. After walking behind this ball of light for several days, he never thought that it would end up like this, and he almost couldn't help but curse out loud. Wasn't this a waste of time? With this, he suddenly lost confidence in Yang Kai, feeling that the two of them were destined to be trapped here for the rest of their lives, and he was afraid that they would never be able to leave this maze. When he turned to look at Yang Kai, he saw that Yang Kai was actually beaming with joy, as if he had discovered something incredible. "Palace Master Yang?" Li Jiao shouted. Yang Kai turned to look at him and said, "Found it." "Found it?" Li Jiao frowned and subconsciously asked, "What did you find? What do you think?" Li Jiao was startled, then became excited. "You mean you found the exit?" Yang Kai nodded heavily, thought for a moment and said, "I will open the exit in a moment, and you will enter with me immediately. If you delay, Dragon Island might discover something." "Okay." Li Jiao couldn't help but gulp. They found it. After walking behind that ball of light for a few days, they actually found the exit? What the hell was that ball of light? Why did it lead them to the exit? However, this wasn't important anymore. The important thing was that they were about to set foot on Dragon Island, and they were about to fulfill their lifelong wish. Li Jiao was excited, nervous, expectant, and uneasy. Just as his mind was in turmoil, Yang Kai's expression became solemn, and the laws of space fluctuated wildly. He stretched out his hands and inserted them into the void in front of him, then fiercely tore. A strange scene appeared, as if something was torn apart, and a huge crack appeared in the void in front of them. "Let's go!" Yang Kai shouted in a low voice. Li Jiao plunged into the crack, and Yang Kai followed closely behind. The two of them instantly disappeared into the endless void. Eastern Territory, Eastern Sea, on an island that was enshrouded in spiritual energy and beautiful, like a fairyland. A man in white clothes stood in the void with his hands behind his back. Beside him, a beautiful woman in a black palace dress stood there with her arms crossed. Her arms squeezed her huge breasts until they were somewhat deformed. The palace dress was below her thighs, and half of her body was exposed to the air. Her skin was white and tender, like white jade, exuding an alluring luster. If all the men in the world were to see such a scene, they would definitely be captivated by it. The man was handsome, and the woman was plump and graceful. Just by standing there, they were an eye-catching scene. The two of them cast their gazes into the distance. On the crater of a surging volcano, a small figure sat cross-legged. The scorching heat waves didn't hurt her in the slightest. Instead, they constantly surged toward her childlike body, and were all absorbed by her. Feng Er, did this girl really fuse with the Phoenix True Fire? The man in white clothes suddenly asked. The beautiful woman in the palace dress who was replaced by Feng Er said, "Yes, and the fusion is perfect." The man in white clothes said, "Isn't she an artifact spirit? Although she is also a fire attribute artifact spirit, which doesn't conflict with the Phoenix True Fire. Her body isn't made of flesh and blood. How can she fuse with the Phoenix True Fire?" The beautiful woman in the palace dress said, "Don't underestimate her body. Although it isn't made of flesh and blood, its plasticity is extremely strong. That is the body of a spirit puppet. You won't be able to find a second one in the world." "You think very highly of her?" The man in white clothes turned his head and looked to the side. The beautiful woman in the palace dress smiled slightly. "Her future achievements will definitely not be below mine." The man in white clothes nodded and said, "In any case, I have to congratulate your Feng clan for having another clansman." The beautiful woman pursed her lips and smiled, looking very charming. At this moment, the man in white clothes suddenly frowned, revealing a surprised expression. "What's wrong?" The beautiful woman looked at him in astonishment. At their level of cultivation, it was very rare for them to be surprised by anything. But the expression on the white-robed man's face clearly indicated that something unexpected had happened. "You might not believe it if I tell you." The man in white clothes turned his head and looked at her, then said with a face full of disbelief, "Someone is trespassing on the Dragon Island." The beautiful woman was startled for a moment, then she immediately chuckled. "Which guy is so reckless? He is really unlucky." She didn't ask how the man in white clothes knew about this matter, because she knew that the other party went to spy on the situation on the Dragon Island a few years ago, and left a trace of his primordial spirit in that void maze. That maze was not easy to crack. Even the man in white clothes couldn't find a way out back then. In the end, he could only use a secret technique to leave behind a trace of his primordial spirit, mainly because he wanted to rely on the power of his primordial spirit to slowly crack the maze. More than 10 years had passed. Presumably, he already had a clue. Now that the man in white clothes knew about this information, it was obviously the feedback of that trace of primordial spirit. In other words, that primordial spirit left in the maze had already disappeared. "If it is really that guy, you know him too," the man in white clothes said with a strange expression. He also couldn't be sure whether the person who trespassed on the Dragon Island was the one he thought. After all, the feedback of that trace of primordial spirit was not very complete. He was only 60% to 70% sure. "I know him too?" The beautiful woman in palace dress was stunned for a moment. "Who?" "It is related to the eldest miss." The beautiful woman in palace dress frowned. "It is related to her." The man in white clothes pointed at the small figure at the crater of the volcano. "It's him." The beautiful woman in palace dress was dumbstruck. The man in white clothes' hint was so obvious. If she still couldn't guess who it was, then she would be an idiot. But she never thought that the one who trespassed on the Dragon Island was actually that guy. How could it be him? The beautiful woman didn't dare to believe it. What is wrong with him? He actually dared to trespass on the Dragon Island. The man in white clothes shrugged his shoulders, showing an expression of, "I don't know either." "You brought him in?" the beautiful woman asked. The man said, "It was not me, it was that trace of my primordial spirit that did it." The beautiful woman said, "Nonsense. What kind of place is the Dragon Island? With that little bit of strength of his, how can he get away with it? I'm afraid he will be beaten to a pulp very soon." The man said, "That trace of my primordial spirit was left behind more than 10 years ago. At that time, I didn't know him. The trace of my primordial spirit naturally wouldn't know him either. I only brought him in to stir up the Dragon Island and see if I can create an opportunity for the master to take advantage of. It would naturally be good if he can cause some trouble, but it doesn't matter if he can't. If something happens to him, Shao-Chi will definitely not let you off. It's not like you don't know how important he is to Shao-Chi. These few years, she has been clamoring to go to the Southern Territory to look for him. If it wasn't because the master grounded her, I'm afraid she would have run away long ago." The man sweated for a moment. "Don't tell her." The beautiful woman said, "There is no such thing as an airtight wall in the world." The man said, "Then what should we do now? He has already gone in. I'm afraid he would already be dead if he had to die." The beautiful woman pondered for a moment and said, "But this is indeed an opportunity. If we can take advantage of this opportunity to infiltrate the Dragon Island, it might not be a bad thing. I will report to the master and see how he decides." The man nodded. The beautiful woman's figure swayed. She turned into a streak of flame and flew towards the distance as fast as lightning. "Were you guys talking about the master just now?" A childish voice suddenly sounded. The corner of the white-clothed man's mouth twitched. He lowered his head to take a look, only to see a 7 to 8 years old little girl standing in front of him, since who knows when. The other party was staring at him with a pair of sparkling big eyes without blinking. The little girl looked like she was carved from jade. One look, and one could tell that she would definitely be a great beauty, who could bring disaster to the country when she grows up. But the white-clothed man knew this was not a little girl at all. He raised his head to look at the sky. He said with a face full of vicissitudes of life, "The wind today is really noisy." Chapter 30:20. The sky was blue, and the earth was vast. In the void, two figures stood there stupidly, not reacting for a long time. These two were naturally Yang Kai and Li Jiao, who had experienced many twists and turns along the way. After the light ball found the exit, Yang Kai tore space and arrived here. But what he saw was completely different from what he imagined. He couldn't help but be stunned. "Palace Master Yang, this is Dragon Island?" Li Jiao turned to look at Yang Kai with a look of astonishment. "I don't know." Yang Kai was also at a loss. He thought that after coming out of the void maze, he would definitely arrive at Dragon Island. But at this moment, he wasn't sure whether this was Dragon Island or not, because this wasn't an island at all. This was a small world. Feeling around slightly, Yang Kai found that the world principles here were extremely complete, even better than his own sealed world bead. Looking up, there was even a scorching sun in the sky. If someone who didn't know the situation saw this, they would probably think that this was somewhere in the star boundary. But Yang Kai knew that this wasn't the star boundary. He had entered and exited many small worlds, and he had a small sealed world himself, so he was extremely sensitive to this kind of existence. This was a small world, a very complete small world, and the world energy here was extremely good. It wasn't that the world energy here was rich. The star boundary was vast, and there were countless cultivation holy lands. Which large sect wasn't located in a place where world energy gathered? Although the world energy in this small world was rich, it wasn't much better than the cultivation holy lands in the star boundary. The key was its purity. The world energy here seemed to be extremely pure, several times purer than any of the cultivation holy lands Yang Kai had come into contact with. Such a cultivation environment was undoubtedly extremely good. Pure world energy meant that one's cultivation speed would be faster. Which cultivator didn't desire this? We didn't come to the wrong place, right? Li Jiao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Why do you say that? Yang Kai turned to look at him. How does this look like an island? Li Jiao was a little disappointed. In his imagination, Dragon Island should be detached from the world, isolated on the sea, with giant dragons churning and breathing out clouds. This place was very good, but it was very different from what he imagined. Who said that the Dragon Island must be an island? Yang Kai asked. Li Jiao was startled. Thinking about it, Dragon Island, it was passed down by word of mouth from generation to generation. Everyone thought that Dragon Island was an island, but no one had really entered Dragon Island. I feel that this is most likely Dragon Island. Yang Kai took a deep breath. That pure spiritual energy made his body and mind comfortable. He felt as if all the pores on his body had opened up. With a grin on his face, he said, "It's not possible. This is definitely the Dragon Island. In this world, apart from the legendary Dragon Island, where else could be better than here?" Yang Kai had seen all the cultivation holy lands, but none of them could compare to this place. Li Jiao nodded lightly, and didn't argue with Yang Kai about this. He said, "Then what should we do now?" Yang Kai frowned and thought for a moment. "Since we're already here, let's take things as they come. Let's check out the environment first." "All right." Li Jiao nodded his head. The two of them immediately flew towards a direction. In order to avoid exposing their whereabouts, the two of them tried their best to restrain their aura. Furthermore, they didn't fly too high, and their speed wasn't fast either. This small world seemed to be very big. It was only bigger than the reincarnation world that they visited a few days ago. The two of them flew over spiritual mountains and great rivers, but they didn't even come across a single dragon race. Although the number of dragon race was very small, according to what Yang Kai knew, there should be some dragon race on Dragon Island. It didn't make sense that there were no traces of them at all. Yang Kai couldn't help but doubt if his guess was wrong. Could it be that this place really wasn't Dragon Island? He and Li Jiao didn't come to an inexplicable small world. If that was the case, then their situation would be very awkward. They did come across some monster beast. Some were strong, some were weak. There were even some powerful monster beast that possessed the bloodline of the dragon race. Their aura was very frightening, and they were running rampant in the mountain forest. The appearance of these monster beasts that possessed the bloodline of the dragon race increased Yang Kai's confidence by a lot. However, there was still no sign of the dragon race. 2 days later, a huge city suddenly appeared in the sight of the two of them. The city was built on top of a huge plain. It occupied almost a third of this plain. Looking from afar, the buildings in the city were densely packed, and the streets of various sizes were crisscrossed. This kind of huge city could accommodate at least 1 million people. Yang Kai and Li Jiao were instantly dumbfounded. An ominous feeling welled up in their heart. "Brotherly, is there a city on Dragon Island?" Li Jiao smiled bitterly and said, "Although I have never heard of a city on Dragon Island, the population of the dragon race is so small. What's the point of making such a big city?" Yang Kai thought the same. There was no need to make such a big city for the dragon race. Is this really not Dragon Island? Thinking until here, his face turned black. 2 days ago, he still vowed to Li Jiao that this was definitely Dragon Island. Who would have thought that he would be slapped in the face 2 days later? However, if this was not Dragon Island, then where was this place? After muttering to himself for a while, Yang Kai said, "Let's go and take a look." No matter what kind of place this was, since they were already here, they had to take a look. The two of them didn't rashly barge into that city. After all, no one knew what kind of place this was, and what kind of people lived in the city. Therefore, the two of them landed about 30 miles away from the city, and found a concealed location to hide, preparing to secretly observe for a while. After taking a closer look, there were indeed many figures moving about in the city. Even if there weren't 1 million of them, there were still several 100,000 of them. This discovery made Yang Kai and Li Jiao even more disappointed. This really wasn't Dragon Island. Otherwise, how could there be so many people? "Someone's coming!" Yang Kai suddenly shouted, and looked in a certain direction. When Li Jiao heard this, he hurriedly looked in that direction, and saw several figures rushing over, quickly flying over their heads. It seemed that they were going to enter the city. After they passed by, Li Jiao said, "A few Dao Source Realm humans." Yang Kai nodded lightly. Those people were indeed humans, and their cultivations weren't high or low. Such existences could be found everywhere outside, so it wasn't anything new. Not long after these people left, another wave of people flew into the city. However, this time, Yang Kai and Li Jiao discovered a strange phenomenon. In this second wave of people, the leader actually had the bloodline of the dragon race. It was a man with a cultivation around the First Order Emperor realm. There were a few traces of dragon scales on his face, but other than that, he didn't have any other characteristics of the dragon race. However, this discovery surprised Yang Kai and Li Jiao. This man's situation was very similar to Li Jiao's. He should also be a dragon descendant, but his bloodline wasn't pure. He was even inferior to Li Jiao. Yang Kai frowned slightly, feeling that this place was a bit unusual. For the next half a day, the two didn't move. From time to time, there would be figures flying over the sky, heading straight for the city. And the more they observed, the more shocked the two became. It couldn't be helped, the number of dragon descendants here was a bit frightening. During this half a day, at least 100 people had flown over. And among these 100 people, 10 of them were dragon descendants. This was a 1/10 ratio, which was impossible to find anywhere else. In the star boundary, although there were dragon descendants, there weren't many of them. But in this damned place, 10 out of 100 people were dragon descendants. If he hadn't seen it with his own eyes, Yang Kai wouldn't have believed it. These dragon descendants also had high and low cultivations. The lowest was at the Origin King realm, while the highest was at the Emperor realm. Moreover, the characteristics of the dragon clan varied. Some had short dragon horns on their foreheads, some had dragon tails, some had nondescript dragon claws, and most of them had a few dragon scales on their bodies. Of course, the characteristics of the dragon clan on their bodies were completely incomparable to those of the real dragon clan. The difference was like the difference between heaven and earth. Rather than calling those dragon scales, it would be better to call them snake scales. In addition to the human race and dragon race, there were also monster race mixed in. Palace Master Yang, what's going on? Why are there so many dragon descendants here? Li Jiao was a little uneasy. Do I look like I know the answer? Yang Kai glanced at him. Li Jiao laughed awkwardly. He was just asking casually, mainly because what he had seen in this half a day was too unbelievable. It's easy to figure it out, just go in and take a look. Yang Kai pointed in the direction of the city. Li Jiao was silent for a while before nodding. After observing for half a day, they found that the city's defenses were not tight. It could be said that there was no defense at all. All the human race, monster race and dragon race who entered the city directly rushed in. No one questioned them at all, and no one collected anything like an entrance fee. So, if Yang Kai and Li Jiao wanted to enter the city, it wouldn't be difficult at all. After finishing their discussion, the two immediately rushed out of their hiding place and swaggered towards the city. The distance of 15 kilometers was quickly covered. The two of them followed the example of the people from before and landed far away, walking towards the city on foot. When he arrived at the city gate, Kai Yang raised his head and looked at it. Above the city gate, there were 3 words written in bold calligraphy. Yang Kai was stunned. Li Jiao was also slightly stunned. It couldn't be helped, the 3 large words were, Half-Dragon City. The two looked at each other, and saw the surprise in each other's eyes. On the city gate, there was a lifelike giant dragon carving. At first glance, the giant dragon seemed to be alive, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws as it pounced forward. Li Jiao's face paled slightly, and he couldn't help but speed up. After entering the city, the two were shocked again. Although they had guessed that the city's population would be large, the scene they saw still exceeded their expectations. There were people coming and going in the city, as many as carps crossing the river. There were many shops in the surroundings, and there were noises, shouts, and haggling sounds. The human race, monster race, and dragon race were mixed in. The human race had the most people, about half of the population, followed by the monster race. Although there were fewer of them than the human race, it wasn't that small. Then there were the dragon race. What the fuck was going on? The two were a little stunned. Chapter 30-21. Half a day later, in a tea house, Yang Kai and Li Jiao sat opposite each other. The fragrance of tea lingered in the air, but both of them were silent. Half a day of observation was enough for them to see a lot of things. This half-dragon city was too strange. Not to mention the incredible number of dragon descendants. Just the number of masters here was endless. At least 1 out of 1,000 people on the street was from the Emperor realm. The population of this city was about 500,000. In other words, there were 500 to 600 people from the Emperor realm living in this half-dragon city. What kind of concept was this? This number was simply too terrifying. Looking at the entire star boundary, there were countless large and small cities, but there had never been a city with the number of the Emperor realm that could be compared to Half-Dragon City. Often, in a large city, it was already incredible to have dozens of people from the Emperor realm, and this was counting those who passed by, let alone hundreds or even hundreds. Even if the world energy here was extremely pure and could help a cultivator's cultivation, this ratio was too frightening. It had to be known that a top sect like Azure Sun Temple only had a dozen or so people from the Emperor realm. Compared with Half-Dragon City, this number was not even a fraction. In addition, in this Half-Dragon City, the dragon descendants with the bloodline of the dragon race seemed to have a higher status. Among the cultivator of the same level, the cultivator from the dragon clan would often follow the lead. Yang Kai estimated that if the masters in such a city were to be taken out, they could sweep away any city in the star boundary and any top sect. Only the sects of the great emperors could compete with this half-dragon city. This was a gigantic city. However, whether it was Yang Kai or Li Jiao, they both found another strange thing. Those dragon descendants, especially those with a slightly purer bloodline, seemed to be a little unstable. No matter how high their cultivation was, their footsteps were weak, and they seemed to have hidden injuries. At the level of the Emperor realm, the higher the cultivation, the fewer dragon descendants there were. What was this situation? Yang Kai and Li Jiao were confused. Logically speaking, those with the bloodline of the dragon race would have a unique advantage in cultivation. For example, if Li Jiao wasn't a dragon race descendant, he would have been stuck at the second-order Emperor realm for the rest of his life. However, because of his dragon race bloodline, he was able to break through to the third-order Emperor realm. However, in Half-Dragon City, the situation seemed to be reversed. The purer the dragon race's bloodline, the harder it was for a dragon descendant to increase their cultivation. The second-order Emperor realm was the limit, and most of the dragon descendants in the Emperor realm were only first-order emperors. On the other hand, those from the human and monster clans who did not possess the bloodline of the dragon race had third-level Emperor realm existences. After staying in the tea house for a long time and listening to the conversations around them, Yang Kai and Li Jiao didn't hear anything too important. Only one person inadvertently spat out the 2 words Dragon Palace, which attracted their attention. Unfortunately, that person seemed to immediately realize that he had said something wrong and hurriedly changed the topic, making Yang Kai and Li Jiao's hearts itch. Half-Dragon City, Dragon Palace, Dragon Descendants, all signs indicated that this place was most likely Dragon Island. However, the hundreds of thousands of people here made Yang Kai unable to believe it. How could there be so many people on Dragon Island? Li Jiao was also confused. This place was too different from what he had imagined, so different that he couldn't accept reality. While the two were silent, a loud noise suddenly came from a shop across the street, as if someone was arguing about something. Immediately after, the world energy surged and principles appeared. A loud bang rang out, followed by a cry of surprise. A figure flew out of the shop and landed heavily on the ground. It was a woman wearing a light yellow palace dress. Her black hair was like a waterfall, and her back was slender and graceful. Although her face couldn't be seen clearly, her aura wasn't weak. She was actually a first-order Emperor Realm Master. It was unknown who she had a conflict with in the shop, but she was actually beaten out of the shop. From the looks of it, her injuries weren't light. When the pedestrians on the street saw this, they all moved aside. Without knowing the cause and effect, no one was willing to meddle in other people's business, lest they get into trouble. "Mother," a tender voice called out, with a hint of sobbing. The woman lying on the ground got up with difficulty, wiped the blood from the corner of her mouth, and looked forward with a fiery gaze. It was unknown whether it was because of anger or because she was beaten, but her tender body was trembling. Oomph! As the cold snort sounded, a man walked out of the shop. This man had a malicious expression on his face, and his pace was neither fast nor slow. He raised his hand slightly and grabbed the hair of a young girl, pulling her back. Caught in this position, the young girl could only bow her body and follow him out. The young girl's face was delicate and pretty. She didn't look very old, and her body was still young. There were 2 small bulges on her chest, and she was extremely petite. Judging from her appearance, she was at most 15 to 16 years old. Her eyes were red, and tears slid down her cheeks. She seemed to have suffered a great shock, and her face was full of panic. She looked forward and said, "Mother, save me." From the way she called out, this young girl and the woman who was beaten out of the shop before were obviously mother and daughter. "Let her go." The woman gritted her teeth and shouted, her emperor chi surging violently. She looked like she was about to fight to the death, but her daughter had been captured, so she was very cautious. No matter how angry she was, she didn't dare to act rashly. What's more, this malicious-looking man's cultivation was not only higher than hers, but he was also a dragon descendant. Even if she went all out, she was definitely not his opponent. "Let her go." The malicious-looking man looked at the woman and sneered. "Do you think I'll let her go just because you say so? Who do you think you are?" The disdain in his words was obvious, and it was obvious he didn't put this woman in his eyes. Saying so, he even lowered his head and gently sniffed the young girl's hair. Suddenly, a look of ecstasy appeared on his face. "She smells so good. This king likes this little girl." The young girl had never experienced such a situation before, and feeling the hot breath on her back, she suddenly stiffened and cried even harder, whispering, "Mother! How dare you?" The woman was furious when she saw this and gritted her teeth. "Do you know whose daughter she is? How dare you treat her like this?" The malicious-looking man sneered. "Of course I know whose daughter she is." The woman was stunned, as if she hadn't expected the other party to give such an answer. She originally thought that the other party was just taking advantage of his power to bully her, and as long as she mentioned her daughter's father's identity, the other party would hesitate to act and she and her daughter would be safe. Who would have thought that it wouldn't have any effect at all? Her heart couldn't help but sink, knowing that the situation wasn't good. The other party had targeted her, and they must have already investigated her before, so her identity might not be useful. The malicious-looking man said, "Do you think they would care about a mortal's body? If they really cared, they wouldn't have driven you and your daughter out." As soon as this was said, not only did the woman's face darken, but many of the surrounding onlookers also looked disappointed, as if they had encountered a similar situation as the woman. "Do you believe that even if this king were to strip her naked right now, no one would care whether you lived or died?" The malicious-looking man said as he reached out and put his hand on the young girl's shoulder. The young girl's body suddenly stiffened, and she couldn't stop her tears from falling, like a broken string of pearls. The woman opposite him was even more shocked and shouted, "Don't!" If he really stripped her daughter of her clothes, her daughter would be too ashamed to see others in the future, and might even commit suicide immediately. Her daughter was her only hope in life, so how could she be willing to see such a thing happen? The malicious man's words made many people frown. They felt that this guy was going too far. Someone immediately said, "Friend, killing people is just a matter of nodding your head. Even if they have offended you in some way, you don't have to humiliate them like this, right?" As soon as this person spoke, the complexion of one of his companions changed, and he quickly pulled him back and whispered something in his ear. The face of the person who spoke couldn't help but change, becoming somewhat pale. The malicious-looking man turned his head and looked at him, sneering. "What did you just say?" This king didn't hear it clearly. "Say it again." The man's complexion changed a few times before he cupped his fists and said in a low voice, "Master, please forgive this one for speaking carelessly and offending you. I hope that master will not take it to heart." The malicious-looking man stared at him coldly, and after a while, he shouted in a low voice, "Scram." Hearing this, the man felt as if he had been pardoned from a dream, and quickly turned around and left. He was willing to stand up for the injustice if it was within his power, but if it involved his own life, He didn't have the courage. When the others saw this scene, how could they not know that this second-order Emperor Realm Dragon descendant had a great background? Perhaps he had a great backer, otherwise, how could he have such a great deterrent force? Some people recognized the malicious-looking man, and naturally knew where his confidence came from. They all shook their heads and sighed, feeling that the mother and daughter pair were most likely doomed. They could have provoked anyone, but they had to provoke this guy. Their future days would be difficult. After showing off his power, the malicious-looking man turned to look at the girl's mother and said with a smug expression, "Do you know what to do now?" How could the girl not know what he was thinking? She clenched her fists so tightly that her fingernails dug into her flesh, but she didn't notice. She raised her head and looked at her daughter, revealing a sad smile. She slowly knelt on the ground and prostrated herself, pressing her forehead against the back of her hand, and said in humiliation, "This concubine is willing to serve this concubine, master. Please let this concubine go." The malicious-looking man curled the corners of his mouth, revealing a mocking sneer. This woman's humble attitude made him extremely satisfied, and his gaze lingered on her round buttocks for a while before he slowly walked forward. With a fierce kick, the woman fell to the ground. This kick wasn't light, and the woman rolled several times before she came to a stop. "Mother!" Seeing this, the girl cried out in grief. "Shut up!" The malicious-looking man slapped the girl's cheek, and with a light smack, one side of the girl's cheek immediately swelled up. Perhaps because she was frightened, the girl didn't dare to make another sound, and her pair of watery eyes widened. After kicking the woman, the malicious-looking man obviously wasn't done yet. He walked forward and stepped on her chest, immediately changing the shape of her full breasts. The woman's expression was painful, but she still said to the girl, "Close your eyes." She didn't want her daughter to see her like this. Chapter 30:22. As a mother, how could this woman be willing to let her daughter see her being tortured? The young girl was dumbfounded, her eyes wide and tears flowing down her cheeks, perhaps because she was frightened or something else. "Wouldn't it have been better if you had agreed earlier?" The gloomy man coldly snorted, his big foot fiercely rubbing her chest a few times. The sound of bones dislocating immediately rang out, but as if he hadn't heard it, he lowered his body and said, "If you had agreed earlier, you wouldn't have had to suffer like this." The woman's face twisted in pain, but she gritted her teeth and didn't say a word, only looking at her daughter and trying to squeeze out a smile, but it was uglier than crying. "Slut, it's your blessing that this king has taken a liking to you, yet you still dare to make excuses." The gloomy man seemed to have not tortured enough, and wanted to vent the anger in his heart. Moreover, he seemed to enjoy the feeling of ravaging this woman, his eyes full of joy. Inside the tea house, Yang Kai's eyes were cold. He and Li Jiao had watched the scene unfold from beginning to end, so naturally they understood what had happened. Although they had just arrived, and had not yet fully grasped the situation in Half-Dragon City, Yang Kai could not bear to watch a mother and daughter being tortured like this under his nose. Just as he was about to take action, Li Jiao suddenly stood up and stared blankly at the woman in palace robes being trampled on the ground. His eyes filled with disbelief, and in the next moment, anger ignited his heart. It's too late to beg for mercy now. The gloomy man was still ravaging the woman in palace robes. "Neither of you, mother and daughter, can escape. Come back with this king." Saying so, he lifted the young girl with one hand and grabbed the young girl's mother with the other. However, a figure suddenly appeared in front of him, and a shocking emperor pressure descended from the sky, directly enveloping the gloomy man. The gloomy man was shocked, and with a tap of his feet, he floated back while shouting in a low voice, "Who is it?" Li Jiao stretched out his hand and threw a punch straight at the gloomy man's face. The gloomy man was horrified and hurriedly pushed his emperor chi to resist, but in the next moment, the fist enlarged infinitely in front of him and slammed directly into the bridge of his nose. With a cracking sound, something seemed to break. The malicious-looking man was directly sent flying by this punch. At the same time, his hand became lighter. The girl who had been captured by him was also out of his control. With a series of cracking sounds, The malicious-looking man was sent flying into a shop at the back. He didn't know how many things he had broken in the process. He struggled to get up and felt dizzy. His mouth and nose were filled with the smell of blood. He reached out and wiped his hand. His hand was covered in blood, and his nose seemed to have been broken. The malicious-looking man flew into a rage and instantly charged out of the store. His gaze was gloomy and cold as he gazed at Li Jiao, and his killing intent surged like a tide as he gritted his teeth and shouted, "Presumptuous!" Li Jiao didn't pay attention to him. Instead, he looked at the young girl he had saved, then looked at the woman in palace attire lying on the ground. He said in a low voice, "Go help your mother up." The girl didn't move. She was probably scared silly. The woman in palace attire looked at Li Jiao in shock. She didn't expect that someone would stand up for her at this time. After all, the malicious-looking man wasn't someone to be offended. Although his cultivation wasn't at the top in Half-Dragon City, and there were many people more powerful than him, he was still someone who couldn't be offended. Anyone who offended him didn't have a good ending. It had nothing to do with cultivation. After seeing Li Jiao's face, the woman couldn't help but open her eyes wide and let out a low cry. Their eyes met. A trace of pity and nostalgia flashed in Li Jiao's eyes, but the woman immediately looked away and avoided his gaze. Seeing her like this, Li Jiao sighed and pushed the young girl again. Only then did the young girl come back to her senses. Crying loudly, she walked forward and helped her mother up. Li Jiao's arrogant attitude undoubtedly angered the malicious-looking man, but it was strange. Although he noticed that Li Jiao's cultivation was a little higher than his, he wasn't afraid. Instead, he glared fiercely at Li Jiao and said, "You actually dare to hurt this king. No matter who you are dead today." "That's what I want to say too." Li Jiao turned his head and looked at the malicious-looking man. Although his expression was indifferent, anyone could hear the anger he was suppressing. Inside the tea house, Yang Kai's eyes narrowed slightly as he picked up a cup of tea and took a sip. His eyes glanced over at the woman in the palace robe, and then back at Li Jiao, his expression changing as he understood something. On the other side, the malicious-looking man was stunned for a moment. Then he laughed and said fiercely, "You have guts. In this Half-Dragon City, no one dares to talk to me like this." "Now there is." Li Jiao took a light breath and calmed the anger in his heart. He had never been so angry before, and the raging anger in his chest was simply about to explode. He couldn't wait to vent his anger and crush this malicious man into smithereens. "You're courting death." The malicious-looking man was also extremely angry. He urged his aura, and the color of the dragon scales below his neck suddenly deepened. A faint dragon's might instantly filled the air. Among the onlookers, many of the dragon descendants showed uncomfortable expressions. There was nothing they could do about it. This was bloodline suppression. The malicious-looking man's dragon race bloodline was higher than theirs, and he was a second-order Emperor Realm Master. When he pushed his aura to its limit, few of the dragon descendants in Half-Dragon City could resist him. Even the humans and monster beasts who were not dragon descendants had difficult expressions at this moment, and quickly moved away. Li Jiao's expression, however, did not change. He remained as motionless as a mountain, simply staring coldly at the malicious-looking man. Seeing his indifferent appearance, the malicious-looking man's expression couldn't help but change. He felt that something was wrong. He also noticed that Li Jiao had a dragon race bloodline, which was why he was so unscrupulous. He was sure that Li Jiao's dragon race bloodline was not as pure as his. But when the dragon pressure filled the air, Li Jiao's performance surprised him. The other party was completely calm. How is this possible? Is the bloodline suppression ineffective? It's impossible for the bloodline suppression to be ineffective. There is only one reason why the other party is so indifferent. The other party's bloodline is definitely not inferior to mine. Thinking of this, the malicious-looking man's expression changed greatly. His cultivation was already inferior to the other party's, so if he didn't have an advantage in terms of bloodline, he wouldn't be his opponent at all. After carefully sizing up Li Jiao, a trace of suspicion flashed in the malicious-looking man's eyes, because he found that Li Jiao looked very unfamiliar. He had no impression of him at all. Although there were many dragon descendants in Half-Dragon City, numbering in the tens of thousands, There weren't many in the Emperor Realm. There were only a few hundred people in the Emperor Realm in Half-Dragon City, and 80% of them were humans and monster beasts. Those from the Emperor Realm, who had a dragon race bloodline, numbered no more than 100. He had some impression of these 100 people, and even if he didn't have a deep relationship with them, he had at least seen them a few times. After all, they all made a living in Half-Dragon City. Although the city was large, they would still meet over the years. But Li Jiao was a face that he had never seen before. Where did this guy come from? A third-layer Emperor Realm cultivator with a bloodline that is not inferior to mine. This kind of guy is simply unheard of. Thinking of this, the malicious-looking man was stunned. The woman in the palace dress was also stunned. The surrounding cultivator was also stunned. Everyone looked at Li Jiao in shock, as if there was a flower on his face. After a while, the malicious-looking man couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat, feeling as if he had kicked an iron plate this time. What a disgrace! Li Jiao coldly snorted, and also urged his own power. In the next moment, a wisp of dragon pressure that was clearly stronger than the malicious-looking man's enveloped the surroundings. The malicious-looking man's dragon pressure was like a bubble, instantly bursting apart. Muffled groans came from all around, all of which were the result of being suppressed. Third-rank dragon vein. It's actually a third-rank dragon vein? Half-Dragon City has a third-rank dragon vein. Cries of surprise rang out one after another, causing Li Jiao to frown. Although he knew that his dragon race bloodline wasn't pure, he didn't know what rank he belonged to. After all, he didn't have anyone to compare to, let alone a standard. The dragon race bloodline classification came from Dragon Island, from the dragon race. This classification was unknown to outsiders. However, listening to the cries of surprise around him, Li Jiao realized that the dragon descendants of Half-Dragon City seemed to be very clear about the bloodline classification. So, he was actually a third-rank dragon vein? This was also the first time Li Jiao knew. Our Half-Dragon City has such a dragon vein? Who is this person? Why haven't I seen him before? Looking at his power, it should be a third-rank dragon vein, right? It shouldn't be enough. It's probably only middle rank. Someone is going to be unlucky this time. Don't joke around. You don't know that person's background. He might not be the unlucky one. The malicious-looking man's expression kept changing as he cursed in his heart. What the hell? Where did a third-rank mid-rank dragon vein come from? He himself was only a third-rank high-rank dragon vein, 2 whole ranks lower than the other party. His cultivation was inferior, and his bloodline was inferior. How could he fight? The dragon pressure pressed down on him, and the malicious-looking man's expression suddenly became incomparably difficult. He felt that the Emperor Qi in his body was not circulating smoothly, and his meridians and flesh were squirming. The throbbing from the depths of his soul made him panic. This was also the first time Li Jiao had tasted the benefits of bloodline suppression. In the past, he could only be suppressed. In front of Zhu Lai and Zhu Qing, he would cower like a grandson. Now he had finally become a grandfather. The anger in his heart did not subside. He raised his hand and swept a slap at the malicious-looking man's face. The malicious-looking man obviously wanted to resist, but he did not have the strength. When the slap came, he could not dodge at all. With a crisp slap, the malicious-looking man's cheek swelled up, and a few of his teeth flew out. He flipped a few times in the air before landing heavily. It was obvious how powerful Li Jiao's slap was. Li Jiao turned his head, and his cold expression suddenly changed. He looked at the young girl with a pleasant expression and said, "He slapped you, so I slapped him back. Did you vent your anger?" The young girl was shocked. She did not know Li Jiao, and did not know why he would stand up for her. Just now, she and her mother were bullied by the malicious-looking man, so she was full of grievance and fear. Now that she saw that evil was being repaid with evil, she was naturally full of joy. She also felt grateful towards Li Jiao, a person she met by chance, and nodded heavily. Li Jiao smiled and said, "If you think it's not enough, I'll slap him a few more times." The young girl thought for a moment, then shook her head. Li Jiao said, "All right, I'll help your mother vent her anger." Chapter 30-23. On the streets of Half-Dragon City, everyone was silent. When Li Jiao turned his head again, His face had returned to its cold expression as he approached the malicious man step by step. After being slapped hard, the malicious man felt dizzy. After calming himself down, he suddenly saw Li Jiao standing in front of him. He immediately flew into a rage out of humiliation and cursed. "You dare hit me?" Li Jiao's eyes drooped as he slapped out again. With a crisp slap, the malicious man's other cheek also swelled up. The dual suppression from his bloodline and cultivation made him unable to fight back in front of Li Jiao. He could only passively take the beating. "Bastard! You!" Before he could finish speaking, Li Jiao's fist landed on his face, instantly causing his skin to split open. "You!" Asterisk boom, asterisk another punch. The surrounding onlookers kept quiet out of fear, as they felt a chill run down their spines. Li Jiao seemed to be furious to the extreme. Without any hesitation, he pounced forward and rode on the malicious-looking man's body. Both of his hands moved like a bow as he continuously slapped the malicious-looking man's face. Pa 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 pa, the sounds of slapping rang out incessantly. The malicious-looking man didn't even have the time to speak. Although he was ruthless, he had a sense of propriety. After all, he was unfamiliar with this place. Although he wanted to help the mother and daughter vent their anger, he didn't kill them. Therefore, although the malicious man was beaten to a miserable state, his life wasn't in danger. "Friend, where it is possible to let people off, you should spare them. This person, you can't afford to offend." A voice suddenly floated into his ears. It should be someone secretly sending a voice transmission to Li Jiao. Li Jiao frowned when he heard the voice, and his hand movements became much lighter. After such a beating, he had vented a lot of his anger, and wasn't as irrational as before. The woman who was saved by him finally came back to her senses at this moment and shouted, "Stop hitting! Stop hitting, master, please stop." She wasn't pleading for mercy for the malicious man. After suffering such humiliation at the hands of the malicious man, and being seen by her daughter, she wanted nothing more than to kill him for revenge. Why would she plead for mercy for him? She was worried about Li Jiao. If this person was really beaten to death, Li Jiao wouldn't be able to survive. Her heart was filled with guilt and uneasiness. She felt that she had implicated Li Jiao. Li Jiao fiercely punched the malicious-looking man twice before stopping. He coldly snorted, "What kind of bullshit is this?" The woman took the opportunity to rush up and grab his arm. She begged, "Master, stop. Don't hit him anymore." Li Jiao took advantage of the situation to get up, and coldly looked at the malicious man lying on the ground. He said in a deep voice, "I'll spare your life this time. If there's a next time, I'll definitely tear you into pieces." The malicious-looking man's face was covered in blood and dirt. His face was almost deformed from the beating. It was unknown whether it was because of shame, or because he was seriously injured. He lay on the ground motionless, as if he was dead. Li Jiao kicked him again, before turning his head to look at the woman. His expression was somewhat complicated as he asked, "Are you all right?" The woman shook her head, not daring to look him in the eye. She gently let go of his arm. She was also from the Emperor realm. Although she had been bullied and suffered some minor injuries, it was not a big deal. "It's good that you're fine." Li Jiao nodded. The woman lowered her head and gently bit her red lips as she said, "Thank you, Master, for your help. Master, you should quickly leave. You can't stay in Half-Dragon City any longer." Li Jiao frowned when he heard this. Whether it was the woman's reaction, or the sound transmission from before, it all conveyed some special information. Li Jiao was not an idiot. How could he not know that the person he beat up had some background? He had gotten himself into trouble. Li Jiao couldn't help but feel a bit uneasy. However, in front of the woman, he did not reveal any of it. If he was given the choice again, he would definitely make a move. It wasn't that he was warm-hearted, but because... "Do you insist on calling me that?" Li Jiao looked at the woman and slightly sighed. The woman's delicate body trembled. She played dumb and said, "Master, what do you mean?" "AI." Li Jiao shook his head. He did not linger on this topic and only said, "Come with me." After saying this, he led the way. The woman hesitated for a moment, but still called out to her daughter, holding her hand as she followed behind Li Jiao. After entering the tea house from before, and going up to the second floor, Li Jiao immediately saw Yang Kai looking at him with a faint smile, and couldn't help blushing, knowing that his impulsive actions just now had made him look like a joke. After all, he was a third-order Emperor Realm Master, and a Palace Master, so it was rare for him to lose his composure like this. Without saying anything, Li Jiao returned to his original seat. Yang Kai pushed a cup of tea over, and Li Jiao drank it in one gulp, not saying a word with a sullen expression. The mother and daughter were standing by the side. If one looked carefully, they would find that they had many similarities. Moreover, their appearances were extremely good. Although the woman was injured and there was blood at the corner of her mouth, it still couldn't hide her peerless beauty. Li Jiao did not speak, and neither did the woman, just standing there with her head lowered, as if she had done something wrong. Only the young girl curiously looked at Yang Kai and Li Jiao, but she paid more attention to Li Jiao. After all, it was Li Jiao who had just saved her and her mother, so the young girl naturally felt closer to him, and her heart was filled with gratitude. "Let's sit down and talk." Yang Kai smiled at them. The woman shook her head and said softly, "This mistress appreciates master's good intentions, but this mistress will just stand." Li Jiao felt stifled when he heard this, and took another sip of tea. The woman then said, "Master, please leave Half-Dragon City quickly. This place is not suitable for you to stay for long." Yang Kai asked, "What is that person's background?" The woman replied, "He doesn't have a great background, but he can talk to that side." Her words were vague, as if she was afraid of something. Seeing Yang Kai and Li Jiao's indifferent expressions, the woman looked at Li Jiao anxiously and said, "Sir, we really have to leave quickly. If we don't leave now, it will be too late." Li Jiao turned his head and looked at her angrily, saying in a deep voice, "You still want to pretend that you don't know me?" As soon as this was said, the woman immediately lowered her head, not daring to look at him. The young girl beside her opened her eyes wide in curiosity, looking at her mother and then at Li Jiao. "You know my mother?" Li Jiao snorted. "Then you have to ask her." He seemed to be a little angry, but in fact, he did not know what he was angry about. The young girl was innocent, turning her head to look at her mother and said, "Mother, do you know this master?" The woman did not say anything, but her shoulders gently shook. Drip, drip, drip. Drops of tears fell, like a broken string of pearls, as if she had thought of something sad. "Mother." Seeing this, the young girl's eyes also turned red, reaching out to hug her mother. "What are you crying for? It's been so many years, why are you still like this?" Li Jiao was a little speechless, knowing that his words just now were a little too harsh. He immediately felt a little apologetic, but he did not know how to comfort her. After a while, he could only look at Yang Kai for help. Yang Kai smiled slightly and said, "Big sister, sit down first." Although they were both first-order Emperor Realm Masters, this woman was definitely older than him, so it was not wrong to call her big sister. What's more, Li Jiao seemed to be old acquaintances with her, so he naturally had to give Li Jiao some face at this time. When he was the hero saving the beauty just now, he was full of vigor, as if he had become a few hundred years younger. Sure enough, as soon as Yang Kai said this, Li Jiao's face immediately glowed, but he still said with a straight face, "Sit down. What are you doing standing here? If people who don't know saw this, they would think that I bullied you." The woman was still crying softly, but she sat down with her daughter, probably feeling that it was a little inappropriate to stand here and cry. Her mood was a little unstable, whether it was because of the bullying just now or because she saw Li Jiao again after so many years, but her tears did not stop for a moment. At this time, it was not convenient to talk to her, so Yang Kai simply looked at Li Jiao and quietly asked, "Do you know her?" As early as when Li Jiao made his move, Yang Kai had already guessed it. Later, various signs showed that Li Jiao and this woman were indeed old acquaintances, but Yang Kai also felt that it was a coincidence that he could meet an acquaintance in this strange half-dragon city. Li Jiao nodded lightly, his expression becoming complicated again, his eyes flashing with a look of reminiscence. Yang Kai did not ask any more questions. This kind of privacy was not good to pry. In any case, he felt that the relationship between Li Jiao and this woman was not ordinary. "Palace Master Yang, Have you heard of the sect called Rui sect? After a moment of silence, Li Jiao suddenly asked. Rui sect? Yang Kai thought for a moment before nodding. I have. Rui sect was also in the Northern Territory, but compared to Fire Dragon Palace, High Sky sect, Seeking Passion sect, and Ice Heart Valley, it was inferior because this sect did not have a third-order Emperor Realm Master. The strongest one was only a second-order Emperor Realm Master. Therefore, although Yang Kai had heard of Rui sect, he did not know much about it. Now that he suddenly heard Li Jiao mention it, he knew that this woman should be related to Rui sect. Li Jiao continued. Rui sect's sect master, Wuxia, is a second-order Emperor Realm Master. Although he is not the top, he is not bad. Rui sect is a sect with a long heritage, and although sect master Wuxia has not done much, he has maintained the foundation of his ancestors. He has many children, one of whom is ranked third. She is a national beauty and is very famous. Everyone calls her Lu Sanyang. At this point he turned his head and glanced at the woman sitting next to him, who was sobbing softly. About 300 years ago, this Li was traveling outside when he encountered a group of evil people committing a crime. Palace Master Yang should not be a stranger to this kind of thing. This Li did not know whether it was right or wrong, so it was not convenient for this Li to intervene. However, at that time, a woman stepped in. Although her cultivation was not bad, she was only in the third-order Dao Source realm at that time. She was surrounded by danger, and this Li saved her. After that, this Li became acquainted with her, and that woman was Lu Sanyang of Rui sect. Palace Master Yang may laugh at this, but this Li is also a lustful person. With such a stunning appearance, this Li was naturally tempted. After interacting with her for some time, this Li felt that she had a good impression of this Li. So this Li personally went to Rui sect to propose marriage. What's more, Li Jiao also had the bloodline of the dragon race. Lu Sanyang's beauty was enough to cause the downfall of nations, so it was normal for Li Jiao to be tempted by her. Chapter 30-24. Since Wuxia agreed, this Li didn't plan to delay any longer, and planned to marry in a month. Unfortunately, man proposes but God disposes. Half a month later, Wuxia sent a message saying that Sanyang had disappeared. This Li was naturally furious, and went to the Rui sect to show off, injuring many people. However, it was later confirmed that Sanyang had indeed disappeared for no reason, not because of the Rui sect. In the following years, the Fire Dragon Palace and the Rui sect have been searching for Sanyang's whereabouts, but they haven't been able to find any clues. Li Jiao smiled bitterly. Not seeing her alive and not finding her corpse, this matter is very strange. Back then, this matter was widely known in the Northern Territory, and this Li lost a lot of face. He was the dignified palace master of the Fire Dragon Palace, a third-stage Emperor Realm Master. Yet he had actually made a mistake in taking a concubine. Naturally, he would become a laughingstock. Yang Kai could almost imagine Li Jiao's mood at that time, so he couldn't be blamed for going to the Rui sect to show off. If he had encountered such a thing, he definitely wouldn't have been able to hold back. Until today. Li Jiao finished speaking, and turned to look at Lu Sanyang. After a moment of silence he sighed. It couldn't be helped that the two women who had loved each other back then now had daughters. Li Jiao couldn't help but feel a little stifled. Although it had been more than 300 years, there were some things that time couldn't erase. He didn't know how Lu Sanyang had gone missing back then. He also didn't know how Lu Sanyang had appeared in this small world. He also didn't know whose child that young girl was. Previously, when he heard Lu Sanyang's voice in the tea house, he only felt that it was familiar. But when the gloomy man kicked Lu Sanyang to the ground, Li Jiao finally saw Lu Sanyang's face and attacked in anger. At that time, he only wanted to stand up for Lu Sanyang, but now, his mood was extremely complicated, and it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had mixed feelings. The woman who was originally engaged to him had gone missing for 300 years, and actually had a child with another man. If it were any other man, he wouldn't be able to keep his face. This was all for Yang Kai. If it were anyone else here, Li Jiao definitely wouldn't have revealed this. Anyway, it was not the first time that he was embarrassed in front of Yang Kai. He was already used to it. Brotherly. A low call came from the side. It was Lu Sanyang who had finally stopped sobbing. He reached out to wipe the corners of his eyes and shouted. Yang Kai snorted and almost laughed out loud. Brotherly. He simply couldn't believe that there was actually someone in this world who would address Li Jiao as such. Moreover, it was such a peerless beauty. Li Jiao's luck with women wasn't bad. However, this was obviously not the time to laugh. He quickly picked up the teacup and placed it by his mouth. Li Jiao's expression shook as he turned his head to look at Lu Sanyang. His heart was in turmoil, but he still sneered. Not pretending anymore. Lu Sanyang didn't raise her head. She said softly, Sanyang is too ashamed to see you. That's why she didn't dare to acknowledge you. You also know that you're too ashamed to see me. Li Jiao snorted coldly. His heart was extremely sullen. He originally wanted to mock and ridicule her to vent the anger in his heart after so many years. However, when he saw her miserable appearance, he swallowed the words that were about to come out of his mouth. His face couldn't help but become a little twisted. Lu Sanyang fiercely wiped the corners of her eyes again. She raised her head and said with a forced smile, Sanyang really didn't expect that I would be able to see Brotherly again in this life. Seeing her like this, Li Jiao's heart softened. He didn't want to criticize her anymore. In this life, the person that Sanyang has let down the most is Brotherly. If you want to beat me, scold me, or even kill me, Sanyang won't complain. It's just that. As she spoke, she turned her head to look at her daughter. Her eyes were filled with love and reluctance. When the young girl heard this, she turned pale with fright. The good impression and gratitude she had for Li Jiao suddenly disappeared. She opened her arms and stood in front of Lu Sanyang. She cried out, Don't bully my mother. Li Jiao was instantly angered. He slammed the table and said fiercely, When did I bully her? The little girl was startled. She blinked her eyes and bean-sized tears suddenly fell. Her body trembled, but her arms were still wide open. Why is this girl like you? Li Jiao was a little speechless. He felt that his tone just now was a little harsh, but he was too embarrassed to apologize. His expression was extremely uncomfortable. Lu Sanyang reached out and pulled her daughter's arm back. She said softly, Chiner, don't make trouble. Uncle Li won't bully your mother. The young girl was skeptical. However, after being yelled at by Li Jiao just now, she didn't dare to challenge him again. Lu Sanyang said, Brotherly, you should leave quickly. After hitting that person, he won't let it go. If you don't leave, you'll definitely be in trouble. Li Jiao sneered. If trash like him dares to pester me again, this lord won't let him off easily. He was stubborn and wanted to save face. In fact, he was still a little uneasy. Half-Dragon City was too strange. If he hadn't accidentally bumped into Lu Sanyang, he wouldn't have been in the limelight no matter what. Lu Sanyang shook her head and said, Brotherly, I know your strength is profound. However, in this place it doesn't matter how strong you are. You won't be facing an ordinary opponent. Li Jiao was originally a little worried, but when Lu Sanyang said this, he immediately snorted and said, Then this lord wants to see what kind of helpers he can find. Lu Sanyang wanted to say something, but Yang Kai suddenly smiled and said, Sanyang, you don't need to worry about our matters. I'm very curious. Why did you suddenly disappear back then? He knew that what Li Jiao wanted to understand the most right now was this matter. Putting himself in Li Jiao's shoes, this was simply a knot in his heart. A knot that had troubled Li Jiao for more than 300 years. However, Li Jiao didn't seem to want to ask, or rather, he didn't dare to ask. It should be because he was worried about personal gains and losses. Yang Kai simply helped him ask. Hearing this, Li Jiao's expression changed. He picked up the teacup and took a sip. Although he pretended to be calm, the hand holding the teacup was slightly trembling. Lu Sanyang obviously didn't expect Yang Kai to suddenly ask this question. A trace of shame appeared on her face as she lowered her head and said, It was so many years ago. I can't remember clearly. This answer obviously didn't satisfy Li Jiao. He didn't care about pretending, and immediately said with a sullen face, So, you were just pretending to be affectionate to this lord back then? Good, very good. His face was filled with grief and indignation. If it was any other man who encountered this matter, they wouldn't be able to remain calm. Thinking back to the romantic feelings of the past, Li Jiao only felt incomparably sullen. He wished he could slap this shameless bitch to death right now. How is that possible? Lu Sanyang suddenly raised her head and shook her head vigorously, tears flowing down her face again. Sanyang's feelings for Big Brother Li were not fake. Sanyang wanted to marry Big Brother Li. Her appearance made Li Jiao's heart soften again. He restrained the malevolence on his face and said in a deep voice, "This lord needs an explanation for what happened back then." Lu Sanyang still shook her head. Li Jiao's anger, which had just calmed down, flared up again. He directly stood up and said, "Fine, if you don't want to say it, then this lord won't force you. Let's just pretend we never knew each other. Palace Master Yang, let's go." Although what happened back then was a pity, even Li Jiao had come so many years ago. At this time, he was naturally able to let go. In any case, his cultivation wasn't bad, so he still had this kind of temperament. Just as he turned around, Lu Sanyang grabbed his sleeve. "What else do you want?" Li Jiao looked down at her with a cold expression. Lu Sanyang sobbed for a while. After a while she softly said, "Sanyang was caught by someone." Li Jiao's face twitched, but he didn't say anything. He just stood there without moving, nor did he mention anything about leaving. "Back then, when we set the wedding date, Sanyang was waiting for you in Rui sect. Later, she really wanted to see you, so she secretly ran out by herself. She wanted to go to Fire Dragon Palace to find you, but she didn't expect. Speaking up to this point, she couldn't continue. She was probably recalling what happened back then. She choked up so much that she couldn't even speak. "Mother." Seeing this, the young girl also cried and raised her hand to wipe her mother's tears. For a moment, the mother and daughter were filled with grief, crying until the sky turned dark. Li Jiao sighed. "All right, don't cry. Let's not talk about what happened back then. I went too far." Lu Sanyang shook her head. She barely managed to maintain her emotions and continued. "Back then, Sanyang was only in the third order Dao Source realm, and that person's cultivation was profound. Sanyang was no match for him, and was captured. Later, there was no need to talk about what happened later. Lu Sanyang was such an outstanding beauty. How could she have a good ending after being captured?" Li Jiao's expression was extremely cold. He said in a deep voice, "Who was it?" Lu Sanyang didn't answer. She only continued, "Later, he brought me to Dragon Island." "Dragon Island?" Li Jiao and Yang Kai were both startled. They looked at her and said, "This place is really Dragon Island?" Lu Sanyang raised her head and glanced at them. She was a little curious. Since they were already here, why didn't they know where this place was? She nodded and said, "That's right, this is Dragon Island." Yang Kai and Li Jiao looked at each other. Their expressions sank. Although Lu Sanyang didn't say who the person who captured her was, it was already very obvious. Who else could freely enter and leave Dragon Island other than the dragon race? Li Jiao clenched his fists, and his hands trembled violently. No wonder Lu Sanyang wasn't willing to say. It turned out that it was the dragon race's doing. If he hadn't repeatedly forced her, Lu Sanyang definitely wouldn't have revealed the truth. Back then, Lu Sanyang's disappearance was actually related to the dragon race. Yang Kai frowned. He secretly felt that this matter was a little tricky. Li Jiao also felt the same. If it was someone else, he wouldn't have cared. Even if it was someone else at the Third Order Emperor realm, he would still fight for Lu Sanyang and seek justice for himself. But the dragon race, he smiled bitterly in his heart. The dragon race wasn't something he could provoke. Just the suppression of his bloodline alone made him unable to even think of resisting. He fell heavily back into his seat, his face ashen. His woman was stolen, he was humiliated, and his face was damaged. But in the end, he didn't even have the ability to take revenge. Li Jiao felt a strong sense of powerlessness in his heart. His heart was stifled. "Then why are you here?" Yang Kai frowned as he looked at her. Lu Sanyang was so beautiful, so it made sense that she was targeted by the dragon race. But why would she appear in Half-Dragon City? Yang Kai couldn't figure it out. He sympathized with Li Jiao in his heart. He felt that the dragon race who stole Lu Sanyang was simply a bastard. Chapter 3025. Hearing Yang Kai's question, Li Jiao also became suspicious. He frowned and said, "That's right, why are you here? Where is the guy who harmed you?" Lu Sanyang lowered her head and was silent for a while. Then she said softly, "After being brought back to the Dragon Island, Sanyang was imprisoned in the Dragon Palace. She lived a life worse than death." Her voice was choked with sobs, and her body was trembling nonstop. "Until 14 years ago." She turned her head to look at her daughter and smiled miserably. "When Qin Er was born, I was driven out." Li Jiao was startled for a moment. He didn't quite understand. But after he came back to his senses, his face immediately became ashen. He slammed the table and said, "Scoundrel!" Yang Kai's face was also unsightly. He felt that the dragon race was really not a good thing. Not only did they capture a woman and bring her to the Dragon Island to harm her for so many years, but when the child was born, they actually drove the mother and child away. Was there still any humanity left in them? Yang Kai didn't have much prejudice against the dragon race before. He only felt that the dragon race was too arrogant. Whether it was Zhu Qing or Zhu Lai, they seemed to be carved from the same mold. However, this didn't matter. If the dragon race wasn't arrogant, then it wouldn't be called the dragon race. But he never thought that the self-proclaimed leader of all spirits, the leader of the holy spirits, the dragon race actually had such a despicable act. "This girl is..." Yang Kai looked at the young girl and asked. Lu Sanyang didn't say anything, but the meaning was already obvious. Since she is the offspring of the dragon race, why was she driven out of the dragon palace? Yang Kai frowned and asked. Even a vicious tiger wouldn't eat its cubs. No matter what, Lu Sanyang's daughter still had the bloodline of the dragon race. Why was she driven out along with her mother when she was just born? Lu Sanyang said in a low voice, "The rules of the Dragon Palace are like this. It's fine if she hasn't given birth to a child. But if she gives birth to a child, she will be driven out of the Dragon Palace if she doesn't have a dragon bloodline." Qin Er doesn't have a dragon bloodline. What kind of bullshit rule is this? Li Jiao was furious. Regardless of whether he had the dragon bloodline or not, he was still his own flesh and blood. How could he sweep him out of the house like he was sweeping away trash? The dragon race was too unreasonable. It's really too much. Yang Kai suddenly had a bad impression of Dragon Palace. Lu Sanyang smiled sadly and shook his head. On Dragon Island, this kind of thing is not uncommon. She turned her head and looked outside. Pointing at the passers-by, she said, "Where do you think the people of Half-Dragon City come from? Where did it come from?" Li Jiao asked. Lu Sanyang said, "Many of them were driven out of the Dragon Palace. Even if they weren't, their ancestors were." What? Yang Kai and Li Jiao both widened their eyes. The dragon race is very few in number. It's very difficult to give birth. Often, there won't be a new member born even after 10,000 years. In addition, the ratio of men to women in the dragon race is very unbalanced. Those adult male dragon race members would often leave Dragon Island and go out to find outstanding women. They would capture them and use them as tools to relieve their lust. After a long time, many women became pregnant. When their children are born, if they have the bloodline of the dragon race, they can stay in the dragon palace and continue to be observed. If they don't have the bloodline of the dragon race, or if their bloodline is too low, they will be expelled from the dragon palace. After countless years, there were many humans, monsters, and even some with impure bloodlines on Dragon Island. Later, as the number of humans, monsters, and dragon descendants increased, everyone built Half-Dragon City here. This was the initial prototype of Half-Dragon City. The residents of Half-Dragon City married each other and gave birth to children. Over the years, the population increased and gradually developed to its current scale. After listening to Lu Sanyang's narration, Yang Kai and Li Jiao were so shocked that they couldn't speak for a long time. How did this Half-Dragon City come about? The creatures in Half-Dragon City, no matter if they are humans, monsters, or dragon descendants, they are all the descendants of dragons? This is simply too inconceivable. Lu Sanyang said very clearly that in Half-Dragon City, some of the people were expelled from the Dragon Palace. These people were all women who were captured by the dragon race and their children. Just like Lu Sanyang himself, this group of people should be very few in number. The rest of the people should be the result of generations of continuous reproduction. No wonder this place was called Half-Dragon City. It turned out that there was another reason. All the residents of Half-Dragon City were more or less related to the dragon race. If it wasn't called Half-Dragon City, then what should it be called? Li Jiao originally felt that he was cuckolded and had nowhere to vent his anger. Even Lu Sanyang himself didn't like him. The reason why he asked so many questions was just to get to the bottom of it. But after hearing this, he couldn't bear it. Lu Sanyang being captured wasn't her fault. After all, at that time, Lu Sanyang was only in the third order Dao Source realm. How much power did he have to fight back against the dragon race? Now that she was in such a miserable state, Li Jiao had no intention of blaming her. He sighed and felt that he and Sanyang were not fated to be together in this life. What is the child's name? Li Jiao looked at the girl and asked. Lu Sanyang said, Yuqin Lu Yuqin. Li Jiao nodded and asked again. Then who is the dragon race that harmed you? Lu Sanyang looked up at him and asked nervously, What do you want to do? Li Jiao said, This seat was humiliated all because of that guy. Don't I have the right to know his name? Lu Sanyang shook her head and didn't say anything. She was clearly unwilling to say the name of the dragon race, so as not to implicate Li Jiao. She knew about Li Jiao's situation, but that was the dragon race, and this was Dragon Island. How could she easily offend him? She wasn't willing to see Li Jiao suffer any tragic end. Li Jiao was furious when he saw this. Just as he was about to say something, he suddenly frowned and turned his head to look in a certain direction. At the same time, Yang Kai also sensed something and looked over with rapt attention. Dragon race. Li Jiao shouted in a low voice, his expression turning ugly. He and Yang Kai had been searching here for a long time, but they couldn't find any traces of the dragon race. Who would have thought that the dragon race would actually appear at this time? Before the dragon race even came close, a monstrous power had already attacked from afar. The suppression from the bloodline made Li Jiao's flesh squirm nonstop. Many of the dragon descendants in Half-Dragon City also noticed this and stopped to watch. After a short while, a resounding dragon roar came from afar. Then, a huge dragon appeared in front of everyone's eyes. It was a green dragon, more than 10 zhang long. It rolled in the clouds and soon arrived in the sky above Half-Dragon City. The huge dragon coiled up and looked down with its head held high. The whole Half-Dragon City seemed to be trembling. All the residents were in a panic. On Dragon Island, the dragon race was the absolute ruler. The dragon race also rarely came to Half-Dragon City. Now that one suddenly appeared, it naturally made people feel apprehensive. They didn't know why this green dragon came here. The green dragon swaggered in the sky for a while, taking in the whole Half-Dragon City's situation. Only then did it slowly transform into its human form. With a flash of light, a young man around 20 to 30 years old appeared. He was wearing gaudy clothes and looked like a butterfly swaggering through the city. All of a sudden, a figure flew up from the Half-Dragon City. Yang Kai and Li Jiao looked at the figure and were surprised. It couldn't be him. The guy flying towards the green dragon was actually the guy who was beaten up by Li Jiao. At this moment, the gloomy man carefully smiled and respectfully landed in front of the green dragon. He was shorter than the green dragon by a whole body. His previous injuries hadn't healed. His cheeks were swollen, and a few of his teeth were missing. Combined with his current flattering posture, he looked quite funny. The green dragon glanced at him and slightly wrinkled his brows. The contempt and disgust in his eyes were obvious. Greetings to Master Fu Qi. I don't know what orders the master has for me. He didn't immediately complain to this green dragon called Fu Qi, because he knew that in the eyes of the dragon race, everyone in Half-Dragon City, including himself, was just an ant. Although he could talk to Dragon Island, in the eyes of the dragon race, he was no different from an ant. If he complained at this time, Fu Qi wouldn't pay attention to him, and it would be annoying for no reason. Fu Qi didn't look at him and just lightly said, "The dragon blood flower needs to be watered." When the gloomy man heard this, he hurriedly nodded and said, "Understood, understood. This little one will do it. Like before, 200 is enough?" Fu Qi gently nodded and said, In. Master, please go ahead. This little one will immediately bring people to the dragon palace. Fuchi said. And 500 mortals. When the gloomy man heard this, he was stunned. 500 mortals? He was confused. He didn't know why Fuchi suddenly made such a request. In the past, when the dragon race came to Dragon Island, it was basically for the dragon blood flower. So they only needed to bring 200 dragon descendants. There was never a time when they wanted to bring mortals. In the eyes of the dragon race, no matter how high your cultivation was, as long as you didn't have the bloodline of the dragon race, you were still a mortal. What was this for? The gloomy man couldn't understand. Are you asking me? Fuchi turned his head and glanced at him indifferently. The gloomy man was shocked. He knew that he shouldn't have asked this question. No matter what the dragon race did, he only needed to follow orders. He didn't have the qualifications to ask too much. He immediately lowered his head and said, I don't dare. Master Fuchi, please calm down. This little one misspoke. Scram. Fuchi spat out a word, then closed his eyes and stood in the void. The gloomy man felt like he had been pardoned. He quickly turned his head and flew towards Half-Dragon City. In the tea house, Lu Sanyang's beautiful face turned pale. She quickly shouted, Brotherly, hurry up and leave. It'll be too late if you don't leave now. Li Jiao frowned. He looked at the gloomy man flying towards him and said indifferently, We can't leave anymore. He had beaten up the gloomy man before. The other party clearly held a grudge. Li Jiao didn't hear what he said to the dragon race. But when he saw the gloomy man's expression, he knew that he couldn't escape forever. Did he regret it? He didn't regret it. Lu Sanyang was being treated like that in front of him. If he still didn't do anything, then he wasn't worthy of being called a man. It was just that he didn't think that trouble would come so quickly. Lu Sanyang also said that the gloomy man could speak with that side. Now it seemed that this side was the dragon palace, the dragon race. Chapter 30-26. Yang Kai narrowed his eyes at the sinister man flying towards them and said, "What's so special about this person that he can speak with Dragon Palace?" Lu Sanyang sighed hearing this. She knew that Yang Kai and Li Jiao would not be able to escape. With the dragon race here, where could they escape to? His face was filled with guilt. He knew that he had implicated the two of them. He immediately said, "This person is called Yuan Wu. There is nothing special about him. He is just lucky. He has a rank 2 high-grade dragon vein and can speak. So, he has always been in charge of the communication between Dragon Palace and Half-Dragon City." "What about the green dragon?" Yang Kai glanced at the dragon race in the air. Lu Sanyang said with a complicated expression, "He's called Fu Qi. He has rank 5 bloodline." After all, she had lived in the Dragon Palace for 200 to 300 years, and there were only a few dragons in the Dragon Palace. Naturally, she recognized Fu Qi. Surnamed Fu? Yang Kai was shocked. He thought that the dragon race on Dragon Island had the surname Zhu. Li Jiao said, "It's rumored that the dragon race on Dragon Island has 2 surnames. One is Zhu, the other is Fu." Yang Kai nodded. Rank 5 SOSO. Lu Sanyang was shocked, looking at Yang Kai in a daze, thinking, what is the background of Brother Li's friend? Why is his tone so arrogant? A rank 5 dragon is only SOSO in his eyes. It has to be known that the strongest dragon vein in Half-Dragon City was only high level 2. It was far from rank 5. That was a true pure-blooded dragon race. It was a completely different concept from the dragon descendants in Half-Dragon City. She thought that Yang Kai was spouting nonsense. Little did she know, Yang Kai was just stating facts. The only dragon race members he had come into contact with were Zhu Qing and Zhu Lai. Both of them had rank 8 dragon veins. And after Zhu Qing merged with him, she reached rank 9. So what was a mere rank 5? In fact, even without Lu Sanyang's explanation, Yang Kai could tell that this green dragon called Fu Qi's bloodline was not high. Because his dragon true form was only a few dozen feet, it was far from Zhu Lai's 30 feet body. Why did a dragon race member come here? Li Jiao asked with a frown. Lu Sanyang came back to her senses and explained, he should be here for the dragon blood flower. Dragon blood flower? Li Jiao's eyes lit up when he heard this, whispering, there is a dragon blood flower in Half-Dragon City. Lu Sanyang's experience made him feel humiliated. His enemy was a dragon race member, and in terms of cultivation, he felt that he would not lose to that dragon race member. After all, he was a third-layer Emperor Realm Master, but in terms of bloodline, he was not even worthy of carrying his shoes. If he wanted to take revenge, he could only improve his bloodline first. And the best way to improve one's bloodline was the dragon blood flower. So when he heard Lu Sanyang mention the dragon blood flower, Li Jiao could not help but take it seriously. If he could improve his bloodline, he would have a chance to fight against a dragon race member. But unexpectedly, Lu Sanyang shook his head and said, how could there be a dragon blood flower in Half-Dragon City? The dragon blood flower is the foundation of the dragon race. It can only be found in the Dragon Palace. Then what you said just now? Lu Sanyang said, the dragon blood flower needs to be watered and cultivated with dragon blood. There are only a few dragon race members in the Dragon Palace, so even if all of their blood is drained, they won't be able to cultivate many dragon blood flowers. What's more, doing this too often will affect one's strength. So unless there is no other choice, the dragon race will not use their own blood to cultivate the dragon blood flower. He came here for the dragon bloodline. Although the dragon bloodline is not pure, there are many of them, so using their blood to water the dragon blood flower will have some effect. Hearing this, Yang Kai and Li Jiao immediately understood. Li Jiao had also cultivated a dragon blood flower in the past, and he had used his own blood to do so. In the entire Half-Dragon City, there were tens of thousands of dragon bloodlines, so it was indeed a good choice. It seemed that the Dragon Palace was using Half-Dragon City as a source of dragon blood to irrigate the dragon blood flower. This was a good plan. No wonder the two found that in Half-Dragon City, the higher one's cultivation, the fewer dragon bloodlines there were. They had seen a few humans and Yao at the 3rd level Emperor Realm, but there was not a single dragon bloodline at the 3rd level Emperor Realm. Clearly it was because of this. The dragon bloodlines with high cultivation were all taken to Dragon Island to cultivate the dragon blood flower. After so many years, it was already good that their cultivation did not fall. So how much could they improve? Lu Sanyang turned to look at Li Jiao and said uneasily, "Brother Li, Yuanwu will definitely take you away." Li Jiao's expression was extremely ugly. When he had fought with Yuanwu, he had exposed his identity as a dragon bloodline. Whether it was bloodline or cultivation, he suppressed Yuanwu. Now that Yuanwu had been ordered to search for dragon bloodlines to cultivate the dragon blood flower, he naturally would not let him go easily. From Yuanwu's flight path, it could be seen that the first person he was looking for was Li Jiao. Li Jiao immediately felt uneasy and looked at Yang Kai for help. He knew that if he was really taken to the dragon palace by the dragon race to cultivate the dragon blood flower, his blood might be drained clean. At this time, only Yang Kai could save him. Even a rank 8 red dragon could not do anything in front of him, let alone a mere rank 5 green dragon. Wait and see. Yang Kai took a sip of tea and said softly. Li Jiao's heart settled, knowing that Yang Kai would not ignore him. Things were as the two had expected. Yuanwu went straight to the tea house and flew to the second floor. He coldly glanced at Li Jiao, no longer having the fear and panic from before. Instead, he felt like a petty person who had succeeded. Previously, he was humiliated by Li Jiao because his bloodline was inferior and his cultivation was inferior. Now that he had a rank 5 green dragon behind him, what was he afraid of? He could not wait for Li Jiao to attack him. If that happened, Li Jiao's death would not be far away. By the order of Master Fu Qi, find 200 dragon descendants to serve in the dragon palace. All dragon descendants above the Dao Source realm are to gather here immediately. If they do not appear within half a cup of tea's time, kill them without mercy. Yuanwu's words were like spring thunder. His voice was not loud, but it was enough to spread throughout the entire half-dragon city. Those that dare to resist will be killed without mercy. Saying this, he pointed at Yang Kai and the others again and said, You. He made a circle with his hand and called out everyone in the tea house. Everyone's expression was ugly. Everyone was uneasy. In the past, when the dragon race came to Half-Dragon City, they were only looking for dragon descendants. In their eyes, mortals had no value other than venting their desires. No one knew why the Dragon Palace would suddenly send 500 mortals over this time. Those that Yuanwu ordered had gloomy expressions. They thought, if they had known this earlier, who would have been willing to come here to drink tea? Was the Dragon Palace a place they could casually go to? If they went there, they might not be able to leave for the rest of their lives. And the cause of this was undoubtedly Yang Kai and the others. If they had not clashed with Yuanwu before, Yuanwu would not have come directly to the tea house. This was an unexpected calamity. In an instant, many people looked with dark expressions at Yang Kai and the others, secretly hating them. Chapter 30-27. There were only 20 or so people in the tea house. Yuanwu called out once, and then flew out, busying himself in Half-Dragon City. With Fu Qi watching him, he did not dare to slack off. So he worked especially hard to gather people, and did not have time to argue with Li Jiao. Palace Master Yang, what do we do? Li Jiao secretly sent a message to Yang Kai. He did not want to go to the Dragon Palace. While he had never been there, he was afraid of that place from the bottom of his heart. He instinctively feared it. At this time, he could only rely on Yang Kai to make the decision. Yang Kai looked coolly at him and sent back, "Let nature take its course." He had come to Dragon Island to find Zhu Qing. Now, he had not even seen her face, and did not know where to find Zhu Qing. Now Fu Qi's appearance was a chance. Zhu Qing should be in the Dragon Palace. To be able to sneak into the Dragon Palace with Fu Qi was something he wished for. Naturally, he did not resist. As to what to do after entering the Dragon Palace, whether to show his cards or act according to circumstances, he could only let nature take its course. Since he had said so, Li Jiao could not refute. He nodded lightly and looked sideways at Lu Sanyang and her daughter. "Follow me, I will not let you be bullied." Ever since Lu Sanyang was called out by Yuanwu, Her face had turned pale. The Dragon Palace, that was a nightmarish place. She had stayed there for 200 to 300 years, and had always wanted to escape. While in the end, she had been kicked out of the dragon race and lost face, she had fulfilled her wish. She had not thought that she would have to go to the Dragon Palace again, after a dozen years. This caused her to feel uneasy, and she gripped her daughter's hand tightly. Lu Yuqin clearly sensed the change in her mother's mind, and leaned close to her without a word. In a short while everything was prepared. There were far more than 200 dragonkin gathered here. But Yuan Wu was clearly very experienced. He picked out 200 dragonkin with decent cultivation, and sent the rest away. The dragon descendants who had been dismissed clearly sighed in relief, and the remaining dragon descendants had dim expressions, as though they had lost their parents. 500 mortals were also gathered here. Only then did Yuan Wu fly towards Fu Qi to greet him. Standing 100 feet away from him, he cupped his hands and said with a flattering smile, "Master, everything is ready. There's no time to lose. Come with me," Fu Qi said, and led the way in front. Yuan Wu turned his head and shouted in a low voice, "Everyone follow. If you delay the important matters of Fu Qi's master, you will be executed without mercy." He didn't know why Fu Qi wanted 500 mortals, but the dragon race was a big deal on Dragon Island. Naturally, he couldn't be careless about it. When everyone heard this, their expressions turned solemn as they chased after him. In a split second, 700 silhouettes soared into the sky. Most of them were from the Emperor Realm. The scene was spectacular. Lu Sanyang was a First-Order Emperor Realm Master, but Lu Yuqin was only a Saint King. With such a cultivation, she naturally couldn't keep up with the speed of the group. Fortunately, with Li Jiao's help, she didn't fall behind. Li Jiao's impression of Lu Sanyang and her mother was extremely complicated, especially Lu Yuqin. She was the child of Lu Sanyang and the dragon race. No matter how beautiful and cute she was, it was difficult for Li Jiao to have a good impression of her. He even had some resentment towards Lu Sanyang, feeling that he had suffered a great humiliation for no reason. But on the other hand, he also knew that he couldn't blame Lu Sanyang for this. Back then, she just missed him so much that she secretly ran out of the Rui Gate. She wanted to go to the Fire Dragon Palace to find him. Who would have thought that she would be kidnapped by the dragon race halfway and brought to Dragon Island? No one could have predicted this. Lu Sanyang definitely didn't want this to happen. From the fact that she didn't dare to recognize Li Jiao in the beginning, it could be seen that she felt extremely guilty towards Li Jiao. Li Jiao's mood was extremely complicated. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on his chest, and his breathing became unstable. Lu Sanyang obviously knew what he was sulking about, so along the way, she just silently followed beside Li Jiao, not saying a word so as not to annoy him. The group of hundreds of people was silent. Everyone was anxious. The dragon descendants were fine. They knew what they were going to do this time. But the 500 mortals were extremely anxious. There had never been a precedent for Dragon Palace to gather mortals. This time, this matter came too suddenly. Some people clearly had good relations with Yuan Wu, and they were beating around the bush to inquire. Unfortunately, what could Yuan Wu know? He was only following Fu Qi's orders to gather mortals. He didn't know what he was going to do next, but facing these people's questions, he was vague and had an unfathomable appearance. This made these people angry, but they couldn't do anything. Along the way, Yang Kai found an opportunity and secretly gave Li Jiao a few bottles of spirit pills. Li Jiao was going to have his blood drained to nurture the dragon blood flower this time. If he didn't prepare early, it might affect his strength. With the help of these bottles of spirit pills, he should be able to safely pass this tribulation. Li Jiao clearly knew that Yang Kai would definitely take out good things, so he didn't refuse. He quietly accepted them and thanked him in his heart. The group left the half-dragon city and flew for half a day. Then, a warm and humid sea breeze blew in their faces. The sound of waves crashing against the reefs entered their ears. Yang Kai looked up and saw an endless sea appear in front of him. At the end of his vision, the sea stretched endlessly. No one knew how big this sea was. This small world actually had a sea. This was out of Yang Kai's expectations. It seemed that this small world was much larger than the reincarnation world. The spirit energy on the sea was especially dense, and the further they flew, the more obvious this situation became. Another half a day later, in the evening, a small island suddenly appeared in front of them. Yang Kai and Li Jiao looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Lu Sanyang spoke at the right time. That is the Dragon Palace. On that island? Yang Kai asked. Lu Sanyang shook her head and glanced at Li Jiao with her beautiful eyes. Seeing that he didn't pay much attention to her, she sighed in her heart and said with a sad expression, "No, the entire Dragon Palace is made up of many islands. That is just the front of the Dragon Palace. The Dragon Palace is just a general name. Every dragon race has their own island. They don't live together." Yang Kai nodded slightly. He also understood that powerful holy spirits like the dragon race shouldn't be used to living in groups. Each of them was incomparably powerful. When they cultivated, their need for spirit energy was great. Naturally, they couldn't gather together. If that was the case, it wouldn't be good for their growth. Even in a large sect like the Azure Sun Temple, every elder had their own spirit peak, not to mention the dragon race. Those spirit islands were their dragon nests. There seemed to be someone waiting over there. Flying closer, it was a woman and a young girl. At first glance, she looked only 15 or 16 years old. She wasn't much older than Lu Yuqin, but her real age was obviously more than that. The growth of the dragon race was extremely slow. Often, it would take hundreds or thousands of years for them to reach adulthood. So this 15 or 16-year-old appearance was just an appearance. She wore a purple dress, her white arms were exposed. She was full and round and looked good. However, there was an impatient look between her brows. She had probably waited here for a long time. Seeing Fu Qi come over, she shouted, "Why are you only here now? I've been waiting for a long time." Fu Qi frowned and said, "It will take some time on the road." Yuan Wu stepped forward and bowed his head respectfully. "Greetings, Master Fu Ling." "Fu Ling of the dragon race again?" Yang Kai's expression changed. He looked at the young girl and frowned. His first impression of this Fu Ling was not very good. There was no other reason other than that there was a trace of insidiousness between her brows. However, looking at Yuan Wu, it was clear that he had entered the Dragon Palace many times. He could even talk to this Fu Ling. It could be seen that he was not without support in Half-Dragon City. Fu Ling casually looked at Yuan Wu and said disdainfully, "It's you." Seeing that she remembered him, Yuan Wu was excited. Just as he was about to say something, Fu Ling did not give him a chance to speak. She hurriedly waved her hand and said, Okay, since you are here, come with me. Huar needs you." When this was said, all the dragon descendants had bitter expressions, including Yuan Wu. Although everyone knew that they would encounter such a thing, when it really happened, they couldn't help but feel a little scared. Fu Qi put his hands behind his back and snorted, "All bastards, come with me." Dragon descendants. It was just the title of the beings with the dragon race bloodline in Half-Dragon City. In front of the true dragon race, these so-called dragon descendants were just a group of bastards with impure bloodlines. They were the despicable products of the dragon race after venting their desires. Even if they were related by blood, no dragon race would care about their life and death or their face. If not, Lu Sanyang and her mother would not have been driven out of the Dragon Palace. After all, no matter what, Lu Yuqin's father was a dragon race, a pure dragon race. The 200 dragon descendants were clearly used to this title. No matter their cultivation, no one dared to show any dissatisfaction. They separated from the crowd and gathered towards Fu Ling. Li Jiao immediately felt uneasy. He slowly moved while looking at Yang Kai. He did not expect that he would be separated from Yang Kai as soon as he came to Dragon Island. He was still hoping to rely on Yang Kai. If they were separated, what could he rely on? Also, compared to himself, he was more worried about Lu Sanyang. Even if he had some resentment towards her, that was in the past. Now that the truth was out, he hated the dragon race that had harmed Lu Sanyang even more. Yang Kai signaled him with his eyes, and Li Jiao understood and nodded subtly. He knew that he did not need to worry about the safety of Lu Sanyang and her mother. Chapter 30:28. He was just saying it casually. The main reason was that he was really unwilling to nurture the dragon blood flower. He had done this more than once. Every time he nurtured the dragon blood flower, he would be weak for a year and a half. That kind of experience was too painful. Who would have thought that Fu Qi would actually nod and agree after thinking about it? All right, then I'll leave them to you, you bastard. If anything happens, you'll be responsible for it. Yuanwu was stunned and then was overjoyed. This lowly one will not disappoint, master. Let's go, let's go. On the other side, Fu Ling was already impatiently urging them. The 200 dragon descendants had no choice but to follow behind her, heading towards the spiritual island where the dragon blood flower was nurtured. Before leaving, many people looked at Yuanwu with envy, making him feel very proud. Suddenly, Yuanwu's eyes flashed, and he stared at Li Jiao with a sinister expression. Li Jiao also turned around at this time. When their eyes met, Yuanwu's lips curled, revealing a sinister smile. Previously in Half-Dragon City, he had suffered a great loss at Li Jiao's hands. He had been humiliated in front of so many people, and his face had fallen. Now the tides had turned. Li Jiao was going to be taken to nurture the dragon blood flower, and he had gotten a good job, being in charge of those 500 mortals. Comparing the two, Yuanwu was extremely happy. So what if your bloodline is high? So what if your cultivation is high? You still have to be taken to be drained. And that mother and daughter pair had finally fallen into his hands. He was already thinking about how to torture Lu Sanyang and her daughter to vent his anger. Mother and daughter flowers. Although he had played with them before, he had never met such a beautiful mother and daughter pair. This time, he had to find a chance to vent his anger. He turned to look at Lu Sanyang and her daughter, and then looked at Li Jiao provocatively. He laughed sinisterly. His meaning was obvious. But unexpectedly, Li Jiao was indifferent. He only glanced at him coldly, and there was even some ridicule and sympathy in his eyes. What did he mean? Yuanwu's expression immediately turned cold. After thinking for a while, he still could not understand what Li Jiao meant. Previously, Li Jiao had stood up for Lu Sanyang and her daughter, so their relationship was not bad. But why was this guy indifferent to his provocation? Yuanwu frowned deeply, his head filled with confusion. Of course, Li Jiao was not worried about Lu Sanyang and her daughter. With Yang Kai by their side, it was fine if Yuanwu did not provoke them. But if he dared to provoke them, his outcome would be terrible. He believed that Yang Kai would not ignore Lu Sanyang and her daughter. The 200 dragonkin gradually disappeared into the distance. Fu Qi turned around and ran in another direction without saying a word. Yuanwu did not have the time to think about Li Jiao's unusual reaction. He hurriedly shouted, "Follow, follow. Do not delay the matter of Fu Qi's master." He was used to using his connections to intimidate others, so his tone was very impolite. No one dared to complain. The 500 people hurriedly galloped forward. When Lu Sanyang and her daughter galloped past, Yuanwu smiled coldly and immediately approached. Lu Sanyang's body shook, her face slightly pale. Li Jiao had left, and she had no one to rely on. Yuanwu had a say in the dragon race. If he really bullied her and her daughter, she had no power to resist. She secretly decided that even if she had to fight to the death, she would not let her daughter fall into Yuanwu's hands. While her daughter was the product of the dragon race's lust, she was the flesh and blood she had carried for 10 months. The reason she had been able to survive all these years was because of Lu Yuqin. If not for this, she would have died long ago. How could she have lived until today? Holding Lu Yuqin in her arms, Lu Sanyang moved slightly to the side, increasing the distance between her and Yuanwu. How could Yuanwu let go of this chance? He moved closer to her, clearly wanting to take advantage of her. Lu Sanyang's expression immediately became unnatural. She lowered her head, her face pale. Yuanwu looked forward, seeing that Fu Qi was flying in front and did not pay much attention to the back. He boldly reached out to grab Lu Sanyang's pretty butt. He had been drooling over Lu Sanyang for a long time. Such a beautiful woman was rare even in Half-Dragon City. Not to mention that she had been expelled from the Dragon Palace. She had once had a very close relationship with a member of the dragon race. This gave Yuanwu a perverse sense of anticipation. Now that he could finally satisfy his craving, he naturally would not miss this chance. But what he did not expect was that he would grab empty air. Yuan Wu's expression darkened. When he turned his head to look, he found that Lu Sanyang, who had been next to him, had run to the other side at some unknown time. A youth in blue clothing was between him and Lu Sanyang. He had just wanted to take advantage of her, but did not notice when this youth had come over. When he looked up, he saw the youth looking at him with a cold expression. This guy did it on purpose. Yuan Wu was instantly annoyed, because he could speak with the dragon race. His status in Half-Dragon City was very high. Whether it was the human race, the Yao race, or the experts of the dragon race, they would all give him some face. Previously, he had been beaten by Li Jiao in the city, which had already made him furious. He did not expect that at this time, someone would ruin his good fortune. Looking over, Yuan Wu's expression turned cold. He transmitted, "It's you." He also recognized Yang Kai. This youth had been sitting at the same table as Li Jiao. The two clearly had a good relationship. What? That dragon descendant has left. And you want to protect this pair of mother and daughter? Do you think you can protect her with your puny cultivation base? Yuan Wu really did not put Yang Kai in his eyes. He was a second-order Emperor Realm Master, and had a second-order high-rank dragon vein. He could even fight against an ordinary third-order Emperor Realm Master. Even if he could not win, it should not be a problem for him to protect himself. Before, he could not detect Yang Kai's cultivation, because Yang Kai did not use his Emperor Qi. At this moment, everyone was flying in the air. With his Emperor Qi, Yang Kai's cultivation could be seen clearly. First-order Emperor Realm. Since when could a first-order Emperor Realm Master challenge him? And he was a human. Yuan Wu was so angry that his nose became crooked. He felt that this brat was not putting him in his eyes at all. He was crazy. Yuan Wu transmitted his voice darkly. "Brat, you have guts. How dare you ruin this king's good fortune?" The corner of Yang Kai's mouth twitched as he replied, "This young master has always had guts." Yuan Wu was stunned when he heard this. Obviously, he did not expect Yang Kai to be so unyielding. He thought that Yang Kai was probably thinking about loyalty, so he braced himself and stopped him. If that was the case, Yuan Wu could easily scare him away. But not only did Yuan Wu's words not scare him away, he even provoked him to speak ill of him. This was a rebellion. In an instant, Yuan Wu hated Yang Kai. He secretly planned to find an opportunity to make this brat suffer a fate worse than death. A mere first-order Emperor Realm human dared to be so presumptuous in front of him. If not for Fu Qi being in front of him, he would have immediately attacked. Yuan Wu smiled coldly and nodded. "Good, very good. Remember your words. I hope you won't regret it in the future." Yang Kai sneered. "Don't worry, this young master never regrets anything he does." Too arrogant, too condescending. Yuan Wu was immediately enraged. In the entire Half-Dragon City, no one had ever dared to speak to him like this. But today, not only did someone say it to him, he even had an expression that said, "What can you do to me?" Gritting his teeth, Yuan Wu said, "Do you think this king won't dare to attack you in front of Master Fu Qi? If that's the case, then you are wrong." "Good, come." Yang Kai looked at him sincerely. "If you want to attack, then attack. This young master won't fight back." Yuan Wu was speechless. He really did not dare to attack. Fu Qi was in front of him. If he attacked for no reason, Fu Qi would be the first to not let him go. He did not think that just because Fu Qi was willing to speak with him, it meant that Fu Qi viewed him favorably. The dragon race was proud. They just disdained to speak with people like him. It was better to have a familiar face than to speak with a stranger. Fu Qi did not have to rely on him. Yuan Wu had considered this point very clearly. So when Yang Kai choked, he was so angry his face turned red. He said viciously, "Boy, I will remember you. When we reach the island, I will let you see this king's methods." "Idiot." Yang Kai glanced coldly at him. Yuan Wu was stunned, and then his face turned red. "What did you say?" Yang Kai's lips moved, and he slowly spat out those two words. Yuan Wu almost exploded. At this time, a figure suddenly inserted itself between Yang Kai and Yuan Wu. He raised his hands in a salute to Yuan Wu, a flattering smile in front of him. His consciousness surged. and it was unknown what he said to Yuanwu. This was a middle-aged man with a sharp mouth, monkey cheeks, and rat eyes. At first glance, one could tell he was not a good person. However, his cultivation was not weak. He was at least a second-order Emperor Realm Master, and he seemed to be from the monster race. The demonic chi on his body was very strong, but it was not very pure. This kind of situation was very normal in the half-dragon city. Dragons were lustful by nature. They had sex with all living things. Not only were human women captured by the dragon clan and brought to the dragon island, there were also women from the monster clan. The offspring of the monster clan and the dragon clan were often like this. They didn't have the dragon clan's bloodline, and their monster chi was not very pure. Coupled with the special situation of half-dragon city, where humans and monsters mixed together, it was inevitable that some half-monsters would be born. It was very difficult for such half-monsters to increase their cultivation. A second-order Emperor Realm Master was already very high. While the man was communicating with Yuanwu with his divine sense, he quietly winked at Yang Kai. Yang Kai blinked and laughed secretly, thinking that this half-monster had good intentions. He had obviously noticed the conflict between him and Yuanwu, so he deliberately came to help. Little did he know that Yang Kai did not need him to help at all. Just as Yuanwu did not put Yang Kai in his eyes, how could Yang Kai put him in his eyes? However, as a result, Yang Kai had a good impression of this half-monster. He felt that one really could not judge a book by its cover. Just by looking at this half-monster's face, anyone would think that this guy was gloomy and wretched. He was definitely not a good person. If he were to meet him outside, he would definitely stay as far away as possible, lest he accidentally fall into his trap. Chapter 30:29. But who knew that he was such a warm-hearted person? He did not know Yang Kai but was willing to take the risk to help. After all, he could easily offend Yuanwu by doing this. Based on the present situation, would offend Yuanwu bring any good results? This caused Yang Kai's impression of him to improve greatly. But it was strange. While this wretched man had interfered, it was unknown what he had said to Yuanwu. But Yuanwu did not have any intention of blaming him. Instead, they gathered together and communicated through voice transmission. The wretched man's face was full of flattery and fawning. Yuanwu enjoyed this very much. In the following part of the journey, Yuanwu did not make trouble for Yang Kai and Lu Sanyang. Looking ahead, Yang Kai narrowed his eyes. Previously, he had been hesitating whether to directly reveal his identity, so that it would be easier to find Zhu Qing. After all, he and Zhu Qing had already done the deed of husband and wife. It was natural for him to come and find her. Also, he had the Dragon Island token. However, after seeing Fu Qi and Fu Ling, he faintly felt that it was not a good idea to act rashly. If he really did that, not only would he not be able to see Zhu Qing, but it might also cause some unpredictable consequences. So he decided to act according to the situation. He would first find Zhu Qing. At night, a cool breeze blew. The sky was dotted with stars. An island suddenly appeared in everyone's vision. They couldn't see it clearly, but the island was definitely not small. Moreover, the spirit chi on the island was not only rich, but also incomparably pure. It was very suitable for martial artists to cultivate here. Yang Kai examined the island, and was secretly shocked that the cultivation environment on Dragon Island was so outstanding. No wonder none of the dragon race he encountered were lower than the Emperor realm. Regardless of whether Fu Qi and Fu Ling's dragon veins were high or not, their cultivation had reached the level of the Emperor realm. This was not strange. The dragon race were holy spirits, and they occupied such a good little world. It would be strange if they were not strong. Mother! Suddenly, Lu Yuqin's low voice came from the side. Yang Kai turned his head and frowned. He found that Lu Sanyang's condition was not quite right. His whole body was trembling, and his lips were tightly pursed. His lips were pale and bloodless. It was obvious that Lu Yuqin had noticed her mother's abnormality, so she called out with concern. Mother, what's wrong? Lu Yuqin asked softly. No, nothing. Lu Sanyang shook his head. Mother, are you feeling unwell? Why are you so cold? No, it's probably because of the wind. Lu Sanyang reached out and hugged her daughter tightly. Lu Yuqin looked at her mother in confusion, half believing and half doubting. She did not know what was wrong with her mother. She had been trembling so badly just now, and it was becoming more and more obvious. Yang Kai also realized that Lu Sanyang's explanation was obviously just an excuse. She was a first-order Emperor Realm Master, so how could she become like this just because of the wind? This explanation could only fool the ignorant Lu Yuqin. After silently observing her for a while, Yang Kai's eyes flashed, and he looked at the island not far away. He could roughly guess why Lu Sanyang had such a reaction. She was captured by a member of the dragon race and imprisoned on Dragon Island for 200 to 300 years. It was only when Lu Yuqin was born more than 10 years ago that she was expelled. So, the place where the dragon race who captured her lived must be a nightmare for her. Along the way, they passed by several islands. Lu Sanyang did not have much of a reaction. However, when the island in front of them came into view, Lu Sanyang's state suddenly became a little strange. The reason was obvious. That island was the place where she had stayed for 200 to 300 years. After more than 10 years, Lu Sanyang was inevitably reminded of the painful memories of the past when she saw this nightmare again. Naturally, she would have some reaction. Her mind was in turmoil, and even her flight became a little unstable. Her body swayed, scaring Lu Yuqin so much that her face turned pale. Yang Kai pushed his Emperor Qi and wrapped the mother and daughter in it, stabilizing them. "Thank you." Lu Sanyang nodded and thanked him. Yang Kai replied, "Since Li Jiao entrusted you to me, I will take care of you. You don't have to worry too much." Lu Sanyang was silent for a while before she spoke. "I haven't asked little brother's name yet." Yang Kai smiled slightly. Lu Sanyang said, "So it's little brother Yang. Are you familiar with big brother Li?" Yang Kai nodded and said, "Very familiar. We are as close as brothers, so his matters are my matters. Big sister Lu, you don't have to be so polite." Yang Kai naturally knew what to say at what time. Lu Sanyang was deeply in love with Li Jiao, and had not forgotten him even after so many years. Yang Kai naturally would not embarrass Li Jiao in front of her. He couldn't tell her that Li Jiao had been bullied by him recently, right? That would be too rude of him. It was just a few words of praise, so there was no loss in moving his lips. Hearing this, Lu Sanyang smiled. Although Big Brother Li has a monster race bloodline, he is still a very good person. He especially likes to stand up for injustice, and is very kind to others. As she spoke, she seemed to recall something, and a smile appeared on her face. With this interruption, her condition really improved a lot, and her trembling was not as bad as before. Yang Kai was speechless. He thought to himself, how could Li Jiao get such an evaluation? Sure enough, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. In Lu Sanyang's opinion, Li Jiao was probably a good person everywhere. Even his fart would be fragrant. A few days ago, when he came to the High Heaven Palace with Jiying to cause trouble, he was jumping up and down fiercely. How could he have a kind face? At that time, Yang Kai really wanted to slap him to death. However, in front of Lu Sanyang, Yang Kai naturally would not say that. He could only follow along with her words. And Big Sister Lu is right. Although I haven't known Big Brother Li for long, a friend in need is a friend indeed. He has helped me a lot. Whether it was looking for Zhu Qing, or coming to Dragon Island this time, Li Jiao had put in a lot of effort. This was something Yang Kai would not deny. Lu Sanyang smiled and said, he is a person who loves to help the weak. If it weren't for him back then, I'm afraid I would have died long ago. How could I live until now? Yang Kai's mouth twitched. He knew that in Big Sister Lu's eyes, he was probably the target of Li Jiao's help the weak. Yang Kai couldn't blame her for thinking this way. He was only a first-order Emperor Realm Master, just like her, while Li Jiao was a third-order Emperor Realm Master. If they were together and something happened, Li Jiao would definitely be the one to take the lead. This was a normal judgment. She took it for granted, and Yang Kai was too lazy to explain. After chatting with her like this, Lu Sanyang's mood calmed down a lot. When facing Yang Kai, she did not feel so much pressure. Their cultivations were about the same, so Lu Sanyang could naturally relax. On the other hand, when facing Li Jiao, she felt guilty and was very careful. This is a pitiful person. Yang Kai sighed in his heart. As she spoke, Lu Sanyang suddenly stopped talking. Her body trembled again, and her eyes trembled as she looked forward. Yang Kai looked and was speechless, because Fu Qi was actually flying straight towards the island in front of them. It seemed that island was his destination. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? There were countless spirit islands in the sea. The dragon race was scattered and far away from each other. No one would have thought that Fu Qi would bring them to the island where Lu Sanyang had stayed before. Since Yang Kai had already guessed it, he naturally would not ignore it. He quietly sent a message. Big Sister Lu, when we get on the island, follow me closely. Don't be separated from me. He did not know if Lu Sanyang heard it or not. In any case, she did not react at all. As the distance got closer, her expression became worse and worse. Finally, the group landed on the island behind Fu Qi. Yang Kai's previous observation was not wrong. Fu Qi's target was this island. The dragon race should be living on this island, because there were many palaces on the other side of the island. Although it was already late at night, the lights in the palaces flickered. It was unknown what the people inside were doing. When they reached the place, Fu Qi waved his hand, and Yuanwu immediately ran over, nodding and bowing. Fu Qi's face was cold. He said a few words in a low voice, then took out a space ring and threw it to Yuanwu. Yuanwu's face became bitter. He clearly looked troubled. Fu Qi ignored him and charged into the sky. His body flashed, and he turned into a green dragon more than 100 feet long. He dove into the sea and disappeared. Master Fu Qi, Master Fu Qi! Yuanwu shouted. If you cannot complete the 1-month deadline, you will all die. A dragon's roar came from the depths of the sea, causing everyone's expression to change. No one knew what they had been brought here for. How could they calm down when they heard this? 1-month deadline? What was a 1-month deadline? What were they going to do in 1 month? No one knew that after a moment of silence, chattering sounds could be heard. Fu Qi had left. Everyone was a resident of Half-Dragon City. At this time, there was nothing to be worried about. A few of the stronger people of the Emperor realm gathered around Yuanwu. Brother Yuan, why did the dragon race call us here? Yes, what do they want us to do? Then what is the 1-month deadline? Brother Yuan, do you know something? If you know, hurry up and tell us. Brother Yuan, you can't be selfish. Right now, we're all grasshoppers tied to the same rope. We have to work together. Yes, if we cannot complete the dragon race's task, the consequences will be unthinkable. The group of people kept talking. Yuanwu's head was about to explode. There was no way around it. This matter concerned their own lives. Who dared to not care? Since Fu Qi set a 1-month deadline, then a 1-month deadline. If they could not satisfy his request, not to mention 500 people here, even 5,000 people would be killed. The dragon race always kept their word, especially on this kind of matter. Yuanwu's expression was twisted to the extreme. It was too late for regret. If he had known earlier, he would have followed Fu Ling to cultivate the dragonblood flower. Now, he had encountered a troublesome matter. It was more dangerous than cultivating the dragonblood flower. What a sin! Why was he so unlucky? Chapter 30:30. There was still a lot of noise around them. Yuanwu endured it for a while before he could no longer bear it and shouted, "Shut up, all of you!" The scene immediately quieted down. Everyone looked at him. Yuanwu coldly swept his gaze over everyone. Then he gritted his teeth and said, "I know a little about the general situation, but I am not too clear. Wait until I investigate it thoroughly." Saying so, he picked up the space ring that Fu Qi had thrown to him before and carefully examined it. Everyone stared at his reaction. Yuanwu's expression was first shocked, then joyful, and then sunk again. After a few changes, he regained his bitter expression. He shook his hand, and suddenly took out something that looked like an animal skin from the space ring, and looked at it carefully. The moment he saw it, he let out a low cry. The people from the Emperor realm around him could not help but gather around him. When they saw what was on the animal skin, their expressions changed. "What is this?" It looks like a palace. The scale is quite large. Huh. It seems that even the materials used for construction have specific requirements. What do you mean? Are we supposed to build a palace? No way. Why would the dragon race need to build a palace? I've never heard of the dragon race having requirements in this area. Incredible, incredible. If this palace is built, I'm afraid there won't be a second one in the entire star boundary. Azure gold, purple copper, icy soul, snow jade, heavenly crystal, meteorite. Hiss, these are all materials used to refine emperor artifacts. This, are they really going to be used to build a palace? Isn't this a bit too extravagant? When they saw what was on the animal skin blueprint, the people from the emperor realm could not remain calm, and their expressions changed. Those who were gathered around and could not see the blueprint clearly had their eyes wide open. Their faces were full of disbelief as their faces twitched. Azure gold, purple copper, icy soul, snow jade, heavenly crystal, meteorite? One after another, extremely impactful nouns reverberated like thunder in their ears, shocking them so much that they couldn't regain their senses. Although they had been living on the Dragon Island and had never interacted with the outside world, it didn't mean that they didn't know what was good for them. There were alchemists and blacksmiths in the half-dragon city, and there was no lack of cultivation materials on the Dragon Island. As long as they didn't go to the Dragon Palace, they could still move around freely in this small world. Therefore, they knew very well what these materials represented. These things were all extremely rare artifact refining materials, and any one of them was priceless and extremely difficult to find. If someone from the Emperor realm could obtain some of these materials, it would be of great help to the improvement of their Emperor artifacts. But now, according to the voice in his ear, these precious and rare materials were actually used to build a palace? Was it true? Everyone was suspicious, not daring to believe what they had just heard. In an instant, everyone's eyes gathered on Yuanwu, wanting him to give an answer. Yang Kai was also a little surprised. After all, if this was really the case, then this was too big of a deal. Even the sects of the great emperors couldn't do such a thing. Could the Dragon Island really do it? Yuanwu had been observing the beast skin blueprint. After a while, he put it away and swept his gaze over everyone. His gloomy gaze paused on Yang Kai for a moment before he said loudly, "The dragon race has given us a very difficult task." As soon as he said this, everyone exploded. It can't be? Are we really going to build a palace? And what materials are we going to use to build it? Building a palace isn't a problem. We have so many people. No matter how big the palace is, we can definitely finish it in a month. But the key is the materials. Yes, where are we going to find these materials? If we can't find the materials, how are we going to build the palace? The dragon race is forcing us to our deaths. Sho, what nonsense are you talking about? This is the dragon palace. Be careful that the walls have ears. The crowd began to discuss again. Yuanwu's expression was extremely ugly. After a while he continued to speak. You are right. The dragon race wants us to build a palace, and an extremely grand one at that. This king just took a look. If this palace is completed, it will occupy an area of over 100 acres. A wave of gasps sounded. Over 100 acres? How big was this island? If it was over 100 acres, it would occupy almost a tenth of this island. They had thought that they had enough people, but when they heard that it was over 100 acres, they were all dumbfounded. Was this still a fucking palace? This was a city, right? Yuanwu pointed at the center of the island and said loudly, "The palace is over there. The dragon race has basically been planned. We only need to act according to the plan." Seeing that the crowd was about to become restless again, Yuanwu pressed down with his hand and said in a low voice, "This king knows what everyone is worried about. It is nothing more than the materials. The Dragon Island has prepared the materials." He raised the ring on his hand high up. "It is all in here." When these words were said, everyone was stunned. Then a wave of gasps sounded. So the dragon race has already prepared. That really scared me to death. Yes, if we have to find those materials ourselves, I think everyone should just kill themselves. That's more like it. But I have long heard that the dragon race is rich. Only now do I know that the rumors are true. Yes, so many materials are only used to build a palace. This is too exaggerated and wasteful. If they could give me some, keep dreaming. Who dares to embezzle the things in the ring? If they really did that, they wouldn't even know when they died. That's true. Haha, I was just saying. Just as everyone relaxed, Yuanwu smiled coldly. It is not that this seed is pouring cold water on everyone. But the materials in the ring are not enough for the temporary residents. There is still a large gap, and we need to mine it ourselves. What? This time, everyone was shocked. In just a few words, the ups and downs of their mood were too frequent. Everyone was unable to accept it. The materials in the ring were not enough. They had to mine it themselves. So many precious materials, where would they go to mine them? These materials were things that could only be encountered and not sought. Yuanwu said, "No need to worry. There are a few spiritual islands in the Dragon Palace that produce these materials. So we only need to mine them." Everyone's tense mood relaxed again. If that was the case, then it was fine. They were afraid that the dragon race would ask them to find the materials themselves. These precious materials were rare outside. Where would they go to find them? Now that they heard that the nearby spiritual islands produced them, they were not so worried. Everyone could not help but criticize Yuanwu. They felt that this guy was not very kind. He spoke halfway and caused them to be shocked. "Master Yuanwu, may I ask why the dragon race wants us to build such a palace?" Someone suddenly asked. This was also the question in everyone's mind. They had coexisted with the dragon race in this small world for countless years. There had never been a precedent for such a thing. In the past, although the dragon race would occasionally go to Half-Dragon City, most of them were to find dragon descendants to cultivate dragon blood flowers. This time, they were suddenly asked to build a palace. It was strange. When did the dragon race pay attention to this? And they had paid such a great price. Just from the size of this palace and the materials needed, this was definitely not for an ordinary dragon race to live in. Perhaps it was the palace of a few great elders of the dragon race. This conjecture made people uneasy. They knew that if this matter was messed up, the 500 people here would not survive. "This king also wants to know," Yuanwu said angrily. Yuanwu replied exasperatedly. He had been in a bad mood today. First, he had been beaten and lost face. Then he had received such a difficult task. He had been suppressing his anger, and now, he had found a reason to vent it all at once. The person who asked the question was a third-layer D-realm human, but after being scolded by Yuanwu, he only gave an embarrassed grunt, and did not dare to say anything more. There was nothing to be done. In this small world, even if his cultivation was higher than Yuanwu's, he did not dare to be his enemy. Not to mention the humans and Yao. All the dragon descendants acted according to his whims. Now, he was using the dragon race's feathers as a command arrow. There was no benefit in provoking him. Yuanwu's gloomy gaze swept around. He took a deep breath and said, "The situation is very serious. This king will not say anything more. I'm sure everyone knows that for a palace like this, with only 500 of us, to complete it within a month, we will have to do our best, and even put our lives on the line." These words were not false. If it was just a palace that covered an area of 100 acres, it wouldn't be a problem for the 500 people present. There were hundreds of Emperor Realm Masters here, so how difficult could it be to build a palace? The key was that the dragon race had specified the materials. It had to be known that these materials were all precious Emperor-level materials. Each of these materials was incomparably strong. If one wanted to mine these materials and grind them into a specific shape, it would require a lot of manpower and resources. Not to mention anything else, just that piece of green gold and purple copper, which was the size of a palm, would take half a day to melt. Everyone recognized the difficulty of this task. They all closed their mouths and had solemn expressions. Only Yang Kai was calm. He looked around and did not care about this matter at all. He had come to Dragon Island to find Zhu Qing, not to be a laborer. As long as he could find a chance to meet Zhu Qing, he did not care about anything else. A gaze suddenly came from the side. Yang Kai looked over and saw the guy with the protruding mouth and monkey-like cheeks smiling at him. When their eyes met, this person nodded lightly. Yang Kai had a good impression of him. Just now, He had come to help when he had a conflict with Yuan Wu. It could be seen that he was a chivalrous person. Regardless of whether Yang Kai needed it or not, he had to accept this favor. So seeing him gesture at him, Yang Kai also smiled at him. Chapter 30-31. Adding on the friction with Yang Kai just now, new and old grudges surged. Yuan Wu's expression suddenly darkened. He pointed at Yang Kai and said, "You go mine the icy soul snow jade for me. If you do not mine 500 caddies a day, I will teach you a lesson." Shwa shwa shwa. Everyone's gazes turned towards Kai Yang, their gazes filled with sympathy. Not many people had paid attention to the small friction between Yang Kai and Yuan Wu. They only knew that this youth was with the dragon descendant who had beaten Yuan Wu. Now that Yuan Wu had called him out, he would definitely be implicated. Of course, this was an unexpected calamity. If it was any other task, it would be fine. It was hard work, but it did not matter much. Even more importantly, mining the icy soul snow jade was a dangerous matter. The place where the icy soul snow jade was born was extremely cold. Even in the Emperor realm, if they stayed there for a long time, they might get frostbite or even die. Also, the icy soul snow jade was very hard. Mining 500 caddies a day? This was simply an impossible task. Yuan Wu was clearly purposefully looking for trouble. Everyone knew. Yuan Wu did not hide it and sneered inside. "Aren't you arrogant? Aren't you arrogant? Daring to look down on me, daring to oppose me, this is the result." He was still thinking about Lu Sanyang and his daughter. He felt that as long as he sent Yang Kai away, he could do whatever he wanted. Thinking about it this way, the task he took today was not a hard one. At the very least, he could command the 500 people present. He was in a good mood and his vanity was bursting. Anyway, for a month from today, he would be the king here. Everyone would have to listen to him obediently. As to whether he could mine 500 caddies of icy soul snow jade in a day, that was not something Yuan Wu needed to consider. It would be good if he could mine it, but if he could not, then he would have an excuse to take care of Yang Kai and let him know the consequences of offending him. Yuan Wu felt that Yang Kai could not complete this task. He was already thinking about how to torture and humiliate him to vent his anger. The others clearly saw Yuan Wu's plan. Their hearts jumped and their expressions changed. Previously, they had been shocked at the cost of the dragon race and the difficulty of building the palace. Now that they heard that Yuan Wu had given Yang Kai a mission, everyone suddenly woke up. Mining the icy soul snow jade was not an easy job. No one was willing to do it. If they were not careful, they might lose their lives. Right now, Yuan Wu held great power. If he wanted to avoid such a dangerous mission, he had to have a good relationship with Yuan Wu. The mining of the icy soul snow jade was definitely not something that could be done by one person. At the very least, it would require 20 to 30 people. With that thought in mind, someone immediately said, "Brother Yuan, my cultivation method just happens to be suitable for mining the azure gold purple copper. Leave this matter to me." They were both mining, but the difficulty and danger of mining lapis lazuli purple copper and icy soul snow jade were on a completely different level. That person naturally rushed to take on the job. "Yes, I also feel that I'm suitable to mine lapis lazuli purple copper." Lu feels that mining the celestial crystal meteorite sand is more suitable for me. Brother Yuan, look. More than a dozen people from the Emperor realm gathered around, all of them taking the initiative to take on the mining work. It was very lively. A smug expression appeared on Yuan Wu's face. He increasingly felt that he had the foresight to take on such a good job. His previous complaints had long disappeared. Although he was arrogant and domineering in Half-Dragon City, and did whatever he wanted, he had never experienced the glory of having such power in his hands. Now that he had finally satisfied his craving, he felt that this trip had not been in vain. But he did not pay attention to those people's requests. Those in power had to have the air of power. If he had to agree to anyone's suggestion, how could he show his wisdom? They could make suggestions, but the final decision had to be in his hands. He had to decide who would mine the icy soul snow jade, who would mine the azure gold purple copper, and who would mine the celestial crystal meteorite sand. He just looked coldly at Yang Kai, the corners of his mouth rising slightly. He snorted. "Boy, I'm talking to you. Are you deaf?" Yang Kai glanced at him, then retracted his gaze and looked into the depths of the sea. "Where is Juqing?" He had seen some spirit islands on the way here. Lu Sanyang had also said that the dragon race lived separately. Juqing must also live on one of the spirit islands in the vast sea. But the key was that he did not know which spirit island Juqing lived on. He had to find out first. Impudent. Yuanwu was furious when he saw that Yang Kai did not give him any face. It was fine that the dragon descendant did not give him any face. The dragon descendant's cultivation was higher than his, and his dragon bloodline grade was higher than his. He was indeed not his opponent. But who do you think you are? A trivial first-order Emperor realm human dared to show him such disrespect. You don't know what you're talking about. Yuanwu was at the peak of his glory. How could he allow Yang Kai to ruin his prestige? With a low shout, he raised his hand and slapped down at Yang Kai. A huge Siam palm print suddenly appeared in the sky and slammed down. Yuanwu did not use his full strength in this attack. After all, he did not want to kill Yang Kai. Not to mention the difficulty of the task. One less person meant one less strength. The 1-month deadline had made it hard for him to breathe. What's more, he did not want to let Yang Kai off so easily. He had already transferred his hatred for Li Jiao's humiliation to Yang Kai. How could he give up if he did not thoroughly humiliate him? He could not defeat Li Jiao. Whether it was cultivation or dragon bloodline, he could not compare to him. Naturally, he could only take a step back. Don't you have a good relationship with the dragon descendant? Don't you want to protect that pair of mother and daughter? This king wants to see if you have the ability. So, Yuanwu only used half of his strength in this attack. But it was enough. He was a dragon descendant, and his cultivation was also at the second-order Emperor realm. His opponent was just a first-order Emperor realm human. Even if he only used half of his strength, he was not someone he could contend against. This palm strike would definitely break the boy's bones and break his tendons. Be careful. Lu Sanyang cried out in alarm, her beautiful face turning pale. Ever since she came to this island, her condition had been a bit off. She looked nervous and her face was pale. Chapter 30-32. Yuanwu did not see how Yang Kai had pounced over at all. His speed was too fast. The few masters who had been paying attention to Yang Kai also narrowed their eyes, their faces filled with shock. Because of Yang Kai's casual palm strike, their attention had been on Yang Kai, so they naturally saw it more clearly than the others. Even so, they could not completely grasp Yang Kai's movements. It seemed like an afterimage had flashed by, and Yang Kai had changed his position. Yuanwu also came back to his senses at this time, and a ruthless look appeared on his face. He raised his hand, clenched his fist, and punched straight at Yang Kai's face. This was almost an instinctive reaction. However, when his fist was still in midair, he suddenly cried out in alarm, and his expression turned extremely ugly. Because at that moment, he suddenly discovered that the left eye of the young man opposite him had turned into a golden slit. That golden slit did not have the slightest emotion, but was filled with majesty and shock, as if a god was looking down from above. When their eyes met, his mind went into a trance. He could only faintly see a budding lotus flower rushing into his mind. Intense pain spread from his knowledge sea and spread throughout his body, causing him to scream and tremble. This aggressive punch could no longer go on. But he was still a master, and after such a sudden change, he immediately knew that he had been tricked by Yang Kai. The cultivation of the young man opposite him was not high, only the first-order Emperor realm, but the power of his spiritual energy made him tremble in fear. The secret technique attack that came from his soul felt like it was going to tear his knowledge sea apart. Yuanwu bit the tip of his tongue, and the pain caused him to sober up for a moment. He clenched his fists and 2 bolts of lightning appeared, turning into thunderbolts that shot towards Yang Kai. The two were very close, and Yuanwu did not hold back at all in this attack. Its power was immense, and the dazzling lightning almost illuminated half the sky. But an inconceivable scene appeared. The lightning shot through Yang Kai's body, but it did not cause any harm to him. Instead, it passed through his back and hit empty air. See, Yuanwu sucked in a breath of cold air, almost unable to believe his eyes. How could he dodge such a sudden attack at such a close distance? No, he didn't dodge it. It was as if his attack had no effect at all. But how was that possible? The lightning had clearly hit him. Yuanwu had seen it clearly. Not only did Yuanwu not understand this question, the others also did not understand. They were all dumbfounded. Just as everyone was in a daze, Yang Kai suddenly reached out and grabbed Yuanwu's neck. His movements were not fast. In the eyes of others, he was as slow as a snail. Yuanwu could have easily dodged, but Yuanwu could not, and was caught by him. Yuanwu's eyes bulged. He felt an enormous force come from his neck, as though it was going to crush his neck. Not only that, the faint dragon presence he had activated was suppressed in an instant, as though it had encountered Nemesis. The most obvious change was that the dragon scales on his neck had become faint again. Bloodline suppression? Yuanwu's heart skipped a beat. He had a similar experience when he was attacked by Li Jiao during the day. The suppression from his bloodline caused him to only be able to use 80% of his strength, which was why he was unable to fight back against Li Jiao. Otherwise, with his second-order Emperor realm cultivation, even if he could not defeat Li Jiao, he could at least exchange a few moves. How could it be so one-sided? But what was going on with this human? Yuanwu did not feel any dragon race aura from him at all. He was not a dragon descendant, so how could he use his bloodline to suppress him? What made him even more frightened was that this suppression was even more terrifying than during the day. During the day, the dragon descendant only had a third-order mid-rank dragon vein. Even if there was some suppression, it was not strong. He could still use 80% of his strength. But now, with this young man grabbing his neck, his strength was suppressed by more than 50%. His emperor chi flowed obscurely in his meridians, and he could not use his strength at all. It was as if he had a serious illness, and his whole body was soft. What the hell? The big hand on his neck was like an iron clamp that tightly bound him. Yuanwu could not even breathe properly, and his face instantly turned red. The eyes of the surrounding cultivators also fell to the ground. What was the meaning of this? Everyone felt that they did not understand. Wasn't Yuanwu a second-order Emperor Realm Master? Wasn't he a dragon descendant? How could he be so easily grabbed by a first-order Emperor Realm human? What was going on? Even if he underestimated the enemy, he should not have done this. And looking at Yuanwu's shocked expression, it was obviously not just because he underestimated the enemy. He seemed to have kicked an iron plate. Was this young man so powerful? Many people could not understand. On the other hand, the strongest experts looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Lu Sanyang did not understand the situation. Seeing that Yang Kai actually dared to attack Yuanwu, and even grabbed Yuanwu's neck, she immediately changed her expression and said, "Brother Yang, little brother Yang, don't. Let him go." She was not pleading for mercy for Yuanwu, but she felt that Yang Kai was too reckless. Now that Yuanwu was in power, how could he have a good end if he really offended him? Mining ice soul snow jade was a dangerous job, but as long as one was careful, they would not lose their lives. Now they had completely offended Yuanwu. How were they going to survive this month? It was not that she did not have good eyesight, but Yang Kai had his back to her, and happened to be blocking Yuanwu, so she really could not see the situation. When she said this, many people looked at her with strange expressions. Lu Sanyang was shocked. She didn't know what they meant. Do you want to live or die? Yang Kai looked at Yuanwu and asked lightly. Although Yuanwu was shocked by Yang Kai's strength, he did not want to lose face. Not to mention, he was the person who was personally appointed by Fu Qi to be in charge of building the palace. So he felt that Yang Kai could not kill him no matter what. He had already lost face. Hearing Yang Kai's question, Yuanwu said coldly, "Let go of this seat, or else you will die without a burial place." Yang Kai immediately smiled. He looked at him and said, "It seems that you want to die. Since that is the case, then I will fulfill your wish." As he spoke, his expression turned cold. He suddenly channeled the power in his hand, and killing intent rolled like a tide. With a soft crack, Yuanwu felt that the bones in his neck had been broken. He jumped in fright. He had not thought that Yang Kai would actually dare to kill him, and it did not look like he was faking it. This guy really wanted to kill him? Where did this person come from? To dare to be so impudent on Dragon Island? This was unreasonable. Was he not afraid that the dragon race would find him? Regardless of whether the dragon race would find him after this matter, if he did not compromise, he would die without a burial place. At the moment of life and death, Yuan Wu did not dare to hesitate. He said with difficulty, "Spare me." Begging for mercy. The hundreds of people around were in an uproar. They were all stunned. A second-order Emperor Realm Master being grabbed by the neck by a first order, without being able to resist, was inconceivable. What's more, it was a dragon descendant against a human. Now Yuan Wu was actually begging for mercy, which was even more unacceptable. After all, in Half-Dragon City, the status of a dragon descendant was not something that could be compared to human or monster beasts. Regardless of cultivation, as long as one was a dragon descendant, their status was much higher. This was the first time that everyone had seen a dragon descendant bow to a human, and a second-order high-ranked dragon descendant, with a second-order Emperor Realm bloodline. If they had not seen it with their own eyes, they would have thought that they were dreaming. Of the 500 people present, except for Yuan Wu, who was a dragon descendant, the rest were all human, monster, or half-monster beasts. Seeing this scene, they were all shocked, feeling that the resentment in their hearts after so many years had finally been vented. They were indeed unwilling to offend a dragon descendant, and some people had even bowed their heads to flatter Yuan Wu before. But this did not mean that they had a good impression of the dragon descendant. It was undeniable that some dragon descendants were very reasonable, but even more dragon descendants felt superior to others in Half-Dragon City, and they were even more arrogant when dealing with non-dragon descendants. They never put these non-dragon descendants in their eyes. Yuan Wu was the best example. Now that they saw Yuan Wu bow his head and beg for mercy, they felt a sense of pride for no reason. It would have been better if you had done this earlier. Yang Kai raised his other hand and gently patted Yuan Wu's face a few times. Although it did not hurt or itch, the slapping sounds made Yuan Wu want to find a hole to crawl into. He also wanted face. Yang Kai's actions were equivalent to slapping his face in public. How could he stand here in the future? Yuan Wu was furious in his heart, but he did not dare to show it on his face. "Don't provoke me again, there won't be a next time." Yang Kai swung his hand fiercely and sent Yuan Wu flying. Yuan Wu landed miserably on the ground, his hand covering his throat as he coughed violently. It sounded extremely tragic, as though he was going to spit out his guts. The surroundings were silent. Everyone looked dazedly at Yang Kai, including Lu Sanyang. At this time, how could she not know what had happened? This little brother called Yang Kai had humiliated Yuan Wu, and it was a suppression in strength. She was not surprised that Brother Li could do such a thing. She knew Li Jiao very well. But what was going on with this little brother Yang? Where did Brother Li get to know this monster? This was too inconceivable, right? Under everyone's gaze, Yang Kai walked to the side and came to the sea. He looked into the distance, his brow furrowed. He did not care about the small conflict with Yuan Wu. What he needed to consider now was how to find news of Zhu Qing and confirm her location. But because of Yang Kai's disturbance, the atmosphere became slightly awkward. Originally, Yuan Wu was arrogant and had great power in his hands. Chapter 30-33. Yuan Wu's face was ashen. After being helped up by the middle-aged man, he coughed violently for a while before saying bitterly, "I'm fine." He glared at Yang Kai with hatred, but when he met Yang Kai's gaze, he quickly dodged. After experiencing what had just happened, he didn't dare to challenge Yang Kai anymore. He could only suppress this resentment in his heart and hope to repay it in the future. The middle-aged man breathed a sigh of relief and said with a flattering smile, "It's good that you're fine, it's good that you're fine. We still need Master to oversee the construction of the palace in the future. If something really happened, what would we do? We don't have a backbone." His flattery caused many people to cast sidelong glances at him, wondering how this guy could be so shameless. But like this, Yuan Wu's expression improved a lot, feeling that he had regained some face. The middle-aged man said again, "Master, if there really isn't a candidate, then leave the matter of mining the ice soul snow jade to me. What do you think?" Yuan Wu was taken aback and turned to look at him, sizing him up seriously for the first time. The rest of the people were also stunned and had strange expressions. Everyone knew how dangerous mining the ice soul snow jade was, so no one was willing to take the initiative to take this job. They all took the initiative to suggest taking on other tasks, because they were afraid that Yuan Wu would assign this matter to them. The middle-aged man was a second-order Emperor Realm Master, so everyone believed that he was also aware of this. But what was he doing? It was clearly dangerous, so why was he taking the initiative? Was there something wrong with this guy's head? Even if he wanted to flatter, he shouldn't play around with his own life. For a moment, everyone looked at the middle-aged man, as if they were looking at a fool. The middle-aged man didn't seem to notice and smiled slightly. "Of course, I'm just saying. As for the specific choice, it's up to Master to decide." As soon as he said this, Yuan Wu had a good impression of this middle-aged man. He had already lost face because of Yang Kai, and the first task assigned to him was thrown out and humiliated. This was a huge blow to his prestige, and it was very likely that it would affect his position in the hearts of these 500 people. But at this time, there was still someone supporting him. How could Yuan Wu not be grateful? And this guy's words were very appropriate and gave him a lot of face. Looking at him deeply, Yuan Wu asked, "What's your name?" He didn't recognize the other party, and vaguely didn't remember that there was such a guy in Half-Dragon City. He couldn't help but feel a little strange. After all, such a strange appearance, he always left a deep impression. The middle-aged man smiled. "This little Wu Chun." "Good you." Yuan Wu reached out and patted Wu Chun's shoulder. It was easy to add flowers to embroidery, but difficult to provide timely assistance. This Wu Chun was undoubtedly here to provide timely assistance, even though the two had never met before and were not familiar with each other. From this moment on, Wu Chen's position in Yuan Wu's heart was already much higher than the others. He nodded and said, "Then I will leave the matter of mining the icy soul snow jade to you. Is 30 people enough?" Wu Chen stilled and had a surprised expression. Then he was overjoyed. "Thank you, Master." When the rest of the people heard this, they all looked towards Wu Chun with incomparable envy, secretly regretting their actions. If they had known earlier, how could they have just stood to the side and watched the show? They would have long rushed up and asked about his well-being. But now, Wu Chun had only said a few words and had obtained Yuan Wu's high regard. So while they had some complaints, they could not do anything about it. With this, the number of people was reduced by half. In the following period of time, Yuan Wu started to assign different tasks to the remaining people. While the dragon race was planned on this island, it was just a general location. The remaining matters needed these 500 people to handle. Building a temporary palace was not a simple matter. It involved many aspects. Fortunately, the remaining 300 people were not completely useless. Many of them had some experience in this area. Yuan Wu gathered them together for a simple discussion, and then gave all kinds of orders. Wave after wave of people flew out, each receiving a different mission, and began to make preparations on the island. In a flash, the entire island was in full swing. Even at night, the sounds of bustling could be heard. When it was almost dawn, everyone's tasks had been assigned. Only Yang Kai, Lu Sanyang, and her daughter were left standing where they were. Yuan Wu clearly did not plan on provoking Yang Kai. Even Lu Sanyang and her daughter were ignored by him. Staring coldly at Yang Kai's back, Yuan Wu snorted softly and turned to leave. When he left, Lu Sanyang immediately looked towards Yang Kai and said helplessly, Brother Yang, what do we do now?" The development of the matter this time was unexpected. She had thought that the two of them would not be able to escape Yuan Wu's evil hands, and had mentally prepared to resist. But when it came to it, she had nothing to do with it. It was thanks to Yang Kai that she was so free. Only now did she understand why Li Jiao had left without any worries. He had not even told her anything before he left. Obviously, Li Jiao knew Yang Kai's abilities, so he did not need to say anything. Big sister Lu, I have something to ask you. Yang Kai turned to look at her. What is it? Ask away. Lu Sanyang looked at Yang Kai cautiously. She no longer dared to treat Yang Kai as an equal. Previously, she could be relaxed in front of Yang Kai, because they were both first-order Emperor Realm Masters. But after seeing Yang Kai's strength, she immediately understood that the value of a first-order Yang Kai was not something she could compare to. The strong were respected. This was an eternal truth. Lu Sanyang was naturally in awe of Yang Kai. Yang Kai, however, did not seem to notice. He pondered for a moment and said, You have lived in the Dragon Palace for a long time. Have you ever heard of a dragon race called Juqing? Juqing dragon race? Lu Sanyang was surprised. Yes. Yang Kai nodded gently. I have never heard of it. Lu Sanyang shook her head and said, I don't mind if you laugh at me. Although I have lived here for 200 to 300 years, I have never left this place, so I don't know much about the Dragon Palace. Is that so? Yang Kai was a little disappointed. He thought that Lu Sanyang, who had lived here for so long, should know some inside information about the dragon race. At the very least, she could point him in the right direction. Who would have thought that she had been under house arrest for 200 to 300 years? Now he could not count on her to help. Lu Sanyang was a little surprised. Brother Yang, you know the dragon race? Yang Kai thought to himself, not only do I know them, but my relationship with them is not shallow. However, he could not say this out loud. He said, I have to go out for a while. Big sister Lu, are you coming with me? Lu Sanyang was shocked and said, Go out? Where to? Go around. You can't. Lu Sanyang's expression changed. She looked around and after making sure that there was no one around, she said softly, Brother Yang, I know that you are strong, but this is the Dragon Palace. This is where the dragon race lives. If you are discovered by the dragon race, Yang Kai smiled and said, many people have gone out. Even if we are discovered by the dragon race, it doesn't matter. Just now, 7 to 8 teams, more than 200 people flew out in different directions. They were all going to different spiritual islands to mine for materials, to build the palace. It was a good cover for Yang Kai. Most of the islands in the Dragon Palace were uninhabited. It was rare to come across an island with living beings. Yang Kai naturally would not miss it. He tried his best to hide his presence. Yang Kai moved his body and pounced on the island. Over the past few days, Yang Kai had also discovered that the place where the dragon race lived was not heavily guarded. There was not even a single barrier or spirit array, so it was not difficult to sneak in. All he needed to do was carefully conceal himself and not be discovered. This had a lot to do with the arrogance of the dragon race. This was the Dragon Palace. Who would be so blind as to wander around? Anyone who dared to do so would be courting death. Hence, he easily got onto the island. In a short while, he arrived at a palace. The palace looked old. The interior decoration was extremely luxurious. There was an ancient vibe everywhere. Occasionally, there would be people coming and going in the palace. Their cultivation was not high. However, what made Yang Kai feel strange was that there were actually men here. Moreover, they were all men. There was not a single woman in sight. This made him suspicious. One should know that the spiritual islands that he had checked before were basically filled with women. Why was the situation reversed on this spiritual island? The more suspicious he was, the more Yang Kai wanted to get to the bottom of this. Carefully avoiding those people, Yang Kai went all the way in. When he reached a certain place, a seductive voice suddenly entered his ears. This made Yang Kai's expression turn strange. Listening carefully, Yang Kai determined the direction the sound was coming from, and after a few flashes, he arrived outside a large hall. Holding his breath, he quietly looked inside. What he saw made Yang Kai dumbfounded. In the big hall, there were more than 10 bodies entangled together. The big hall was filled with a licentious aura. The aura was so strong that it even drifted outside through the windows. One after another, sounds that made people blush continuously came from inside. It was as if an invisible little hand was plucking at people's heartstrings, causing their blood vessels to expand, making them unable to control themselves. Occasionally, there would be muffled groans and hurried sounds of collisions. Yang Kai had seen a lot of such scenes over the past 2 days. The spiritual islands where the dragon race lived were mostly filled with such scenes. If that was all there was to it, Yang Kai wouldn't be so dumbfounded. What shocked him was that the people in the big hall were basically all men. Other than that, there was only one woman. The woman's back was facing Yang Kai, her smooth back curves graceful and enchanting, exuding a porcelain-like luster. Perhaps because she had been stimulated, her white skin had taken on a pink hue, causing one's imagination to run wild. Behind her, a well-built man was working hard. In front of her, there were 2 men kneeling on her left and right. They seemed to be sucking on something. On her left and right there were also 2 men. Each of them grabbed her small hands and placed them in their mouths. They sucked on her fingers one by one. There was a fawning look on their faces as they stared at the woman's face without blinking. In the big hall, there were many naked men lying there. They looked weak, as though they were half dead. No one knew what kind of torture they had gone through. There were humans, demons, and half-demons among those men. However, the woman gave off a pure dragon's aura. This woman was a member of the dragon race. At that time, Kai Yang was shocked. He couldn't believe his eyes. The licentious life of the dragon race was something he had learned over the past few days. However, this kind of licentious life was basically for the male dragon race. It was his first time seeing a female dragon so licentious. The scene in front of him was extremely impactful. Chapter 30-35. Inside the main hall, the rain gradually stopped. Outside the main hall, Yang Kai was dumbfounded. Time seemed to have stopped at this moment. The woman's slightly squinted eyes met with Yang Kai's peeping gaze, causing them to collide head-on. Yang Kai's heart skipped a beat, and he cursed inwardly. He had also braved through many storms, but what he saw today was still hard for him to believe, and he couldn't help but be shocked. It was only at this moment that he saw that the dragon race in the main hall was actually Fu Ling, who he had seen a few days ago. Fu Ling's slightly narrowed eyes slowly became sharp, and it was obvious that she had discovered Yang Kai. How could Yang Kai dare to stay any longer? The law of space surged, and in a flash he disappeared. Fu Ling frowned and slowly got up. A trace of water slid down her thigh, but she didn't care at all. She didn't cover her body and just walked straight out. She glanced at the place where Yang Kai was standing before, but didn't find anything. Fu Ling's brows furrowed even more, and she turned her head to look into the distance and snorted softly. Above the sea, Yang Kai flew in the air with an awkward expression. He didn't expect to encounter such a thing. It wasn't that he wanted to spy, but the scene was too lively, and he couldn't help but take a few more glances, which accidentally exposed his whereabouts. He didn't know if Fu Ling had discovered him. She should have discovered him, otherwise, there wouldn't be such an obvious change in her eyes. Would she come to find trouble with him? According to the temperament of the dragon race, this matter was almost certain. But even if Fu Ling wanted to find trouble with him, she probably didn't know his identity. When he met her a few days ago, Fu Ling didn't pay much attention to him, so she probably didn't remember a nobody like him. So there was no need to be too worried. However, although this female dragon's life was a little debauched, her figure and appearance were extremely good. After all, it was the Holy Spirit dragon race, so it couldn't be bad. Thinking of the scene he saw before, Yang Kai couldn't help but feel a little scared. Along the way, Yang Kai let his imagination run wild. He checked a few more islands, but he still didn't find anything. He could only go back first. He had been out for a few days. He did not know how Lu Sanyang was doing. He was still worried that Yuan Wu would make trouble for them. Half a day later, Yang Kai returned to the island. He landed on the ground and looked around. He didn't see Lu Sanyang and her daughter. He didn't know if they were hiding or something. Just as Yang Kai was about to search around, the sound of splashing water suddenly came from the nearby sea. Soon after, a burst of clear and melodious laughter entered his ears. Yang Kai turned his head and saw two graceful figures slowly rising from the sea. It was Lu Sanyang and her daughter. No one knew what they were doing in the sea, but they were now returning from the sea. Both mother and daughter were dripping wet. Their clothing clung to their bodies, and their graceful curves were fully outlined. One was full and mature, the other young and alluring. Yang Kai's eyesight was incredibly sharp, so even if he wasn't too close, he was still able to take in this beautiful scene with a single glance. He discreetly averted his gaze and looked elsewhere. Seeing that they were fine, Yang Kai relaxed. The laughter continued. It was Lu Yuqin's voice. The little girl seemed to have encountered something that made her laugh nonstop. Suddenly the laughter stopped. She must have discovered Yang Kai. Mother and daughter exchanged a look, and then hurriedly used their power to dry the seawater on their bodies. They held hands and flew over. "Brother Yang, little brother Yang." Lu Sanyang called out, and landed with her daughter not far from Yang Kai. Perhaps because of what happened before, Lu Yuqin was a little shy. At this moment, she was hiding behind her mother, not daring to show her face. Her face was a little hot. Yang Kai looked at them and nodded lightly. He smiled and said, "Big sister Lu is in such a good mood." He thought that the mother and daughter were playing in the sea. Lu Sanyang pursed her lips and smiled. She asked, "Brother Yang, did little brother Yang find anything?" Although she didn't know why Yang Kai wanted to go out, she knew that Yang Kai definitely had something to do. However, since Yang Kai didn't take the initiative to speak, it wasn't convenient for her to ask too much. "I'm just going to take a look," Yang Kai replied. Lu Sanyang said, "The scenery in the Dragon Palace is pretty good. Little brother Yang, wait a moment. I'm going to deliver something. We'll talk later." Yang Kai asked suspiciously, "Deliver what?" "This." As Lu Sanyang spoke, she flipped her wrist. A night pearl suddenly appeared in her hand. This night pearl was not small. It was the size of a man's fist. What was rare was that it was round and full. At a glance, one could see that it was of high quality. It gave off a gentle light, and gave people a feeling of warmth. Yang Kai's eyes lit up when he saw it. This kind of luminous pearl had no value for martial arts cultivation, but many women loved it very much. There was no other reason other than that this kind of luminous pearl was the best for lighting. It was many times better than some strange stones used for lighting. "This pearl is not bad." Yang Kai nodded and praised. Lu Sanyang said, "This is a special product of the Dragon Palace. It is very difficult to see something like this in the outside world." "Who are you giving this to?" Lu Sanyang's expression became slightly unnatural, but after a moment of thought she said, "That Yuan Wu." Yang Kai's expression suddenly darkened. "He arranged something for you?" Previously, when Yang Kai had left, all 500 people had missions. Only Yang Kai and Lu Sanyang did not. It was not that Yuan Wu was giving Yang Kai face, but that Yuan Wu did not dare to order the three of them to do things. He had suffered under Yang Kai before, but unexpectedly, after he had left, Yuan Wu had done something like this. This made Yang Kai slightly angry. It seemed that he had not taught him a lesson before. Yang Kai immediately turned his head to look at the center of the island. Lu Sanyang saw his expression and knew what he was thinking. She hurriedly said, "It is not like this. He did not force me to do anything." "Then why did you?" Yang Kai frowned as he looked at her. Lu Sanyang said, "I took the initiative to do this." "Took the initiative? Why was that?" Yang Kai said, "Actually, you do not have to do this. He does not dare to do anything to you." "I know." Lu Sanyang grimaced. "But I want to leave here as soon as possible. The dragon race has given us a month. If we can finish the palace as soon as possible, we can leave as soon as possible." With her explanation, Yang Kai immediately understood her plans. This was her nightmare. Every moment she stayed, she would be tormented by those painful memories. She naturally did not want to stay for long. She wanted to leave as soon as possible. Understanding this point, Kai Yang's anger calmed down. Since he had taken the initiative to take on this task, he couldn't say anything more. "What does that side need these luminous pearls for?" "For illumination?" Lu Sanyang nodded and said, "Yes, Such a large palace definitely needs these pearls. Also, I am familiar with the territory of this place, and know where to easily find such pearls. So it is not a difficult matter. If I can help, I will help. Lu Yuqin suddenly poked her head out and said, Mother found several hundred pearls at once. Lu Sanyang had lived here for 200 to 300 years. Even if she could not leave this island too far, she must have moved around in the past. She was familiar with the situation of the coastal territory. For her to find the luminous pearls, she was more efficient than other people. Then Yuanwu did not make things difficult for you? Yang Kai looked at her and asked. No. Lu Sanyang shook her head. His attitude was not good, but he did not make things difficult for us. All right. Yang Kai nodded. Brother Yang, little brother Yang, please wait a moment. I will go give the pearls to him, Lu Sanyang said, and then gave some instructions to Lu Yuqin before flying away. Only Yang Kai and Lu Yuqin were left. Yang Kai smiled at her. Lu Yuqin was clearly afraid of strangers. She stood there awkwardly without speaking, her face slightly red. Yang Kai found something to talk about and chatted with her. The little girl only replied with a few grunts and did not dare to say much to Yang Kai. A short while later, Lu Sanyang came back with a smile. She looked at Yang Kai and said, That Yuanwu probably saw you come back, so he did not even dare to look at me this time. People like him bully the weak and fear the strong. Yang Kai snorted coldly. He looked down on people like Yuanwu. This was because he had not provoked him. If he had provoked him, it would not have been as simple as teaching him a lesson. Lu Sanyang's expression suddenly darkened. She said in a low voice, Just now, I heard someone say that many people mining the icy soul snow jade have died. Some of them even belong to the Emperor realm. She had an expression of lingering fear. Clearly, she rejoiced that she and her mother had Yang Kai's protection. Otherwise, Yuanwu would have sent them to mine the icy soul snow jade. People from the Emperor realm also died? Yang Kai was shocked. Even though he knew that mining the icy soul snow jade was not a good thing, and would definitely be dangerous, he had not thought that people would die. How many days had it been? Yes. I did not hear the specifics. I only know that there seems to be Yin energy erupting from the icy soul snow jade mine. Those people did not have time to dodge, and were frozen to death. Yang Kai said. What about that Wu Chen? Yang Kai did not understand this sharp-mouthed and monkey-cheeked guy. Previously, he had helped him out, and then volunteered to mine the icy soul snow jade, to save some face for Yuanwu. He seemed to be a good person who always thought for others. But Yang Kai felt that this guy was not simple, and could not help but pay more attention to him. Lu Sanyang said, I don't know. I did not see him. He should still be mining the icy soul snow jade. After all, this is a task given by the dragon race. No one dares to slack off. Even if there is danger, they can only do it. That's true. Yang Kai nodded lightly. Among the 500 people, he was the only one who didn't take this matter to heart. Chapter 30-36. Sensing the abnormality, Yang Kai turned to look in that direction. There were not many people, only 4, 1 man and 3 women. The man was Yuanwu. He was accompanying the 3 women, nodding and bowing with a cautious expression. The 3 women were all extraordinarily beautiful, especially the leader. She looked around 24 or 25 years old, but was a beauty with a graceful figure. The woman was wearing a light green palace dress. When she flew over, her beautiful hair fluttered in the wind, and her dress danced in the wind. She was extremely beautiful, but at this time, this woman seemed to have encountered something. She looked extremely angry, her expression was cold, and her beautiful eyes were filled with wanton cold light. Compared to her, although the 2 women behind her were not bad looking, they were still lacking in some way. The 4 people flew straight over. Yang Kai couldn't help but frown. He did not know what these people wanted to do. Lu Sanyang clearly also discovered these people. Her face suddenly paled, and her delicate body started to tremble. Lu Yuqin hurriedly leaned towards her and said in a low voice, Mother, what is it? Lu Sanyang shook her head. She did not speak, but her expression grew more uncomfortable. Yang Kai detected this. He glanced at Lu Sanyang, and then at the women. His mind moved, and he asked in a low voice, "You know them?" Lu Sanyang nodded imperceptibly. Yang Kai understood. According to what Lu Sanyang had said before, this was the spiritual island where a dragon race called Fuqi lived. She had been captured by Fuqi, and had lived on this spiritual island for hundreds of years. Lu Sanyang was not the only woman on this spiritual island. There were many playthings that belonged to Fuqi. The three women flying over were clearly such people. It was not strange that Lu Sanyang knew them. After all, they had lived together for hundreds of years. How could they be strangers? However, looking at the current situation, Lu Sanyang was clearly afraid of these women. Perhaps they had some grudges with each other. As his thoughts changed, Yang Kai had already guessed most of the situation. With a slight movement of his footsteps, he blocked Lu Sanyang's figure without leaving a trace. He didn't know why the three women were here, but judging from the expression of the woman in the lead, it wasn't anything good. In the blink of an eye, Yuanwu flew over with the three women. The group of four did not land. They just stood in the air, looking down at Yang Kai and the others. "Who is it?" The woman in the lead looked at Yang Kai with a cold face and asked coldly. Yuanwu pointed and said, "Madam, it's them." The woman's eyes turned cold. She gritted her teeth and said in a low voice, "How dare you? Are you the ones who injured Xiaohong?" Yang Kai's expression did not change. He just stared coldly at Yuanwu. Being stared at like this, Yuanwu suddenly felt uncomfortable. He immediately recalled the humiliation he had suffered a few days ago. His expression changed a few times, and he couldn't help but shrink his neck. He was truly afraid of Yang Kai. Even to this day, he still couldn't figure out how a trivial first-order Emperor realm human could be so much stronger than him. What method did this human use to suppress his dragon bloodline? However, he soon remembered that he did not come alone. He had a master by his side. With such a backer, why should he be afraid of him? Thinking of this, Yuanwu quickly straightened his waist and pointed at the woman in the palace dress. He shouted in a low voice, "This is the mistress of this place, Madame Hua. Madame Hua is asking you a question. Are you deaf?" Hearing him introduce her like this, Madame Hua also raised her chin slightly. She looked insufferably arrogant. In fact, on this spirit island, there was no such thing as a mistress. Fuqi brought them here. At most, he treated them as playthings and kept them at his beck and call. He had never treated them as equals. However, Madame Hua was very good at dealing with people. She was also a heavenly beauty, so she was quite favored by Fuqi on the entire spirit island. Besides Fuqi, her status was one of the best. Yuanwu's introduction was undoubtedly giving her face, so Madame Hua was very satisfied. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Her slender phoenix eyes looked disdainfully at Yang Kai, as if she was looking at an ant. Yang Kai did not look at her. He just stared at Yuanwu, and the corner of his mouth curled into a sneer. Yuanwu suddenly felt like there was a thorn in his back. He was extremely annoyed. He thought to himself, "How dare you be so arrogant after I introduced you like this? Don't you know who this Madame Hua is?" However, the more Yang Kai was like this, the happier he was. He could not defeat Yang Kai, but if he could borrow Madame Hua's hand to give Yang Kai an unforgettable lesson, it would be good. So, seeing Yang Kai so unruly, he immediately rejoiced in Yang Kai's misfortune. He wanted Yang Kai to be even more unruly. He called out, "Madame Hua, look at this guy. He is too arrogant. He does not care about you at all." Madame Hua was also very angry. She had thought that if she appeared, these ants would not bow their heads. While she was not of the dragon race, and was not of the dragon bloodline, she was favored by Fuqi. How could these dogs and cats compare to her? After being instigated by Yuanwu, she snorted coldly. "You are very daring. No wonder you dared to injure Little Red." Yang Kai slowly turned to look at her. He frowned and said, "What Little Red?" He really did not know what Little Red was. He instinctively felt that Yuanwu had done something to frame him. Madame Hua smiled coldly and said, "Do you not know what you have done? I do not know what you are saying. Presumptuous." Yuanwu shouted in a low voice and shouted at Yang Kai. "Madame Hua has a golden-backed red carp, and likes it very much. Today it was injured for no reason. Who else could it be but you?" On this island, only you dare to be so reckless. Yang Kai shook his head and said, "What golden-backed red carp? I have never seen it." He had just returned from outside. Where had he seen a golden-backed red carp? However, from the name, it should be a kind of fish. It was probably this Madame Hua's pet. Speaking of which, these women were trapped on Ling Island. Other than serving Fu Qi to vent their desires, they had nothing else to do. It was normal to have a pet to adjust their mood. However, this matter had nothing to do with him. He sneered in his heart. Yuanwu. Oh Yuanwu. I did not plan to do anything to you. I did not think that you would play such despicable tricks. It seems that the previous lesson was not enough. Killing intent rose in his heart towards Yuanwu. He looked at him like he was looking at a dead person. Let him see. Madame Hua suddenly waved her hand. She faintly felt that this young girl was familiar, as though she had seen her somewhere before. Chapter 30-37. That timid young girl was very familiar, but Madame Hua could not remember where she had seen her before. She had come to this spiritual island for almost 200 years. If she had seen her before, it was 200 years ago. But looking at this young girl's cultivation and appearance, she was clearly in her teens. In other words, she had not been born 200 years ago. How could she have seen her before? Also, this young girl's face and eyes gave her an extremely annoying feeling. They were very similar to another person she knew. Madame Hua's beautiful eyes turned and looked again at Lu Sanyang, who was hiding behind Yang Kai. Seeming to understand something, she sneered. Is it fun to hide? Get out here. Hearing this, Lu Sanyang trembled. How would he dare to go out? Seeing this, Madame Hua was even more certain of her judgment. Her lips curled into a smile. Sanyang, we have not seen each other for more than a decade. You don't even recognize Jejia? Sanyang? Yuanwu stilled and looked in surprise at Madame Hua. He quickly understood. Madame Hua and Lu Sanyang knew each other. His heart skipped a beat, and he knew this was not good. If Madame Hua and Lu Sanyang had a good relationship, he would be in trouble. But carefully observing Madame Hua's expression, Yuanwu's heart settled. Madame Hua did not look like she had a good relationship with Lu Sanyang. There was clearly some conflict between the two. His eyes turning, Yuanwu pretended not to know and asked, Madame knows her? Madame Hua smiled coldly. No, of course I know. I have been with Sanyang for more than 200 years. Sanyang has always taken good care of me. How can I not know her? Yuanwu said with a fawning smile. This is such a coincidence. He finally understood that Madame Hua and Lu Sanyang should be the exclusive property of the dragon clan in this place. Looking at Madame Hua's eccentric manner, the two of them probably had a lot of jealous fights on this island. As for women, there was only so much they could do after all the fighting. Later on, Lu Sanyang was expelled from the Dragon Palace by the dragon race and ended up in Half-Dragon City. However, Madame Hua stayed behind. Now that she had met her enemy, how could Madame Hua still be polite? Third Madam, aren't you going to come out and greet elder sister? What's the point of hiding it like this? Big sister saw you. Seeing that he couldn't avoid it, Lu Sanyang had no choice but to walk out from behind Yang Kai. His head was slightly lowered, and his expression was uneasy. Madame Hua snorted lightly. The two women beside her also shouted in unison. It really is you. The two clearly recognized Lu Sanyang, but because of Madame Hua's attitude, the two did not have good expressions towards Lu Sanyang. They looked coldly at her, and even had a hint of disdain and schadenfreude. Thinking back to when Lu Sanyang was still on the island, she had been greatly favored by Fu Qi back then. Lu Sanyang's status on the island was the same as the present Madame Hua. Madame Hua had competed with her for 200 years, but had always been weaker. Now the tables had turned. Madame Hua had ascended, and Lu Sanyang had been mercilessly expelled. The winner was king, and the loser was in the wrong. Naturally, there was no need to think highly of her. Elder sister Hua, younger sisters. Lu Sanyang bowed her head and called out softly. Her expression grew even more uneasy. If possible, she was not willing to come out. But Madame Hua had guessed her identity. There was no use in hiding. Also, if today's matter was not resolved, it would be great trouble. Looking at these familiar yet unfamiliar faces, Lu Sanyang couldn't help but recall the past. She felt depressed. Impudent. The lady holding the fish tank shouted. She looked coldly at Lu Sanyang. How dare you call us elder sister and younger sister? Why don't you take a look at yourself in the mirror? How dare a person who has been expelled call us elder sister and younger sister? How shameless. Although the other lady didn't shout, her expression clearly showed that she had the same idea. In the past, they were afraid of Lu Sanyang because of Fu Qi's favor. But now they were the ones who were superior. In their eyes, Lu Sanyang was just a piece of smelly meat that was discarded by the dragon race. Since it was smelly meat, why should they be afraid? Madame Hua smiled and seemed to be magnanimous. Forget it. We have been sisters for so many years. Why make things difficult for Sanyang? When she said that, the other lady didn't say anything else. Madame Hua assumed the posture of a victor. She looked down at Lu Sanyang and said, I haven't seen you for more than 10 years. How have you been, younger sister? Lu Sanyang pursed her red lips and said softly, Thank you for your concern. Sanyang has been well. Madame Hua nodded gently and said, It's good that you have been well. AI, when younger sister left this island, you didn't know how sad elder sister was. Elder sister even went to Master Fu Qi to plead for you. I wanted the master to let you stay. Unfortunately, the master had already made up his mind. Elder sister couldn't do anything. Younger sister, please don't blame me. Lu Sanyang shook her head and said, Elder sister, what are you saying? Sanyang has never blamed you. Madame Hua smiled and said, I knew Sanyang was the most reasonable. No wonder you were the most favored by the master on this island. Thinking about the past. As she spoke, she glanced at Lu Sanyang from the corner of her eyes. Seeing her sad expression, Madame Hua was very satisfied and continued. In the past, younger sister was so powerful. Even elder sister had to rely on you. But who knew that there would be unexpected changes in the sky? Heaven is really unfair. Lu Sanyang stood there and didn't say a word. She knew that Madame Hua was ridiculing her. However, she had no choice but to lower her head under the eaves. Moreover, she wasn't the kind of person who liked to fight. She was like that in the past, and she was like that today. Oh, that's right. Younger sister, how did you return to the island this time? Did the master let you come back? Madame Hua spoke for a while and suddenly changed the topic. It wasn't the master's idea. Lu Sanyang shook her head gently. Madame Hua pretended to be shocked. Since it wasn't the master's idea, how would you dare to come back? Are you not afraid that the master will blame you if he knows? Yuanwu chuckled from the side and said, Madam, we have come to the island this time to build a palace for the master. They have all come to contribute, and have not been summoned by anyone. Madame Hua suddenly realized. So that is how it is. Then you have to be more careful. This palace is being prepared for the master's wedding. You cannot be careless at all. If there is a mistake, none of you will have an advantage. Wedding? Yuanwu stilled. He really didn't know about this. A few days ago, after Fu Qi brought the 500 of them here, he only gave them some instructions before leaving. He didn't say what this palace was for. It wasn't until he heard it from Madame Hua that he understood that this palace was actually prepared for the dragon race's wedding. The wedding of the dragon race. This was an incredible matter. The members of the dragon race were rare to begin with, and their maturation period was extremely long. Adding on that the ratio of men and women was not balanced, the chances of them becoming partners were very small. According to what Yuanwu knew, the last time a dragon race wedding was about 10,000 years ago. It could be imagined how important this matter was. Understanding this, Yuanwu immediately said, Madam, do not worry. This Yuan will do his best in the construction of the palace to satisfy the master of the dragon race. Madame Hua nodded slightly inside. She said helplessly, The master is also about to get married. I don't know how to live in the future. Elder sister is somewhat envious of younger sister. She left this place more than 10 years ago and obtained freedom. It is a pity that elder sister, and the others still have to stay here. I don't know which mistress they will serve in the future. Then you can leave. No one is forcing you to stay. Lu Yuqin suddenly shouted angrily. Although she was still young and inexperienced, she was still able to distinguish between good and bad people. This Madame Hua and those two women had been targeting her mother the moment they arrived. There was an indescribable sense of superiority in their words, and they were constantly ridiculing her. She had long been infuriated, and at this time, she finally exploded. Lu Sanyang's expression changed. She pulled Lu Yuqin and said in a low voice, "Do not speak nonsense." Madame Hua's long and narrow eyes stared at Lu Yuqin. She said softly, "Sanyang, this is that little bastard?" When Lu Sanyang had been banished from the island, Lu Yuqin had already been born. Because Lu Yuqin did not have any dragon bloodline, she had implicated her mother and been mercilessly banished. Combined with her age and appearance, how could Madame Hua not know the relationship between Lu Yuqin and Lu Sanyang? After being contradicted by Lu Yuqin, she was too lazy to be polite with Lu Sanyang. She did not have a good impression of Lu Sanyang, so she naturally would not be polite to Lu Yuqin. What's more, this was the child of Lu Sanyang and the master. Even if she did not have a dragon bloodline, she was still the descendant of the master. Lu Yuqin's existence was like a thorn in Madame Hua's heart. She would not be happy until she got rid of her. Lu Sanyang said with a pale face, "The child is not sensible. Elder sister, please do not blame her." The woman holding the fish tank said coldly, "The child is not sensible. Is the master also not sensible?" Lu Sanyang bit her red lips and said, "Elder sister, please be merciful. Sanyang will apologize to you on her behalf." Madame Hua sneered. "Younger sister, what do you mean? You make it sound as if elder sister is unreasonable. Is elder sister so scary? Then elder sister means..." Madame Hua waved her hand and said, "I will not bicker with you about this matter." Lu Sanyang was a little surprised but still said gratefully, "Thank you, elder sister." Madame Hua said, "I will not bicker with you about this matter, but I will not let the matter of little Hong go. Younger sister, you don't know. Ever since you left, elder sister has been thinking about you day and night. She can't sleep and eat well. She misses you very much." Lu Sanyang naturally did not believe her. When she was on this island, Madame Hua did not hesitate to make things difficult for her. She kept fighting with her. Even if she ignored her, she did not have any intention of stopping. She was happy that she left, so why would she think about her day and night? This was obviously nonsense. Fortunately, elder sister met little Hong. Madame Hua's gaze turned, and she looked at the red carp in the fish tank with gentleness. Little Hong has given elder sister a lot of comfort these past 10 years. Elder sister has already considered it as family. Now that little Hong has been injured, elder sister will not let it go. I hope younger sister can understand this." She looked coldly at Lu Sanyang and said in a deep voice, "Who injured little Hong?" Chapter 30-38. The sea wind howled, and Madame Hua's tone was cold. Lu Yuqin immediately shrunk back, her gaze evading as though she was guilty. It's fine if you don't speak? Madame Hua snorted softly. It's fine if you don't speak? There are so few people on the island. You know who injured Little Red. If you stand out, I can be lenient. If I catch you, Yuan Wu immediately said. Madam, it was definitely the mother and daughter who injured it. Madame Hua snorted. How do you know? Yuan Wu said. I said before that the two of them were responsible for collecting night pearls in the sea. Madame's red carp should have been injured when it was playing in the sea. Other than the mother and daughter, no one else has gone into the sea. I can guarantee this. Madame Hua's eyes were cold. She stared at Lu Sanyang and said, Sanyang, what else do you have to say? Lu Sanyang lowered her head and said, Jejia, calm your anger. I did not know that red carp was Jejia's pet. If I knew earlier, Jejia would not have acted. Good as expected. It was you who injured Little Red. Jejia, you really disappoint me. Madame Hua gritted her teeth, her expression furious. Lu Yuqin suddenly took a step forward and shouted. My mother did not injure it, it was me. It suddenly jumped over, and I just casually hit it. It did not injure it, right? When she suddenly said this, Lu Sanyang hurriedly pulled her back and said in a low voice, Do not speak. Madame Hua looked coldly at this scene and said with a light smile, Such a deep mother-daughter relationship. Jejia sees this and is very moved. While she said this, she did not have a moved expression on her face. She had a cold expression, as though she wanted to eat someone. The woman holding the fish tank also shouted, You did not injure Little Red? Open your dog eyes and look. The scales on Little Red's back have been knocked off. Do you know how much Madame loves Little Red? Now that it has become like this, can you bear the responsibility? Lu Sanyang also knew that today's matter could not be resolved peacefully. She knew Madame Hua's temper very well. She was not merciful. Also, she had always disliked her. Now that she had a chance, how could she easily give up? She quickly begged. Jejia, it was I who injured this red carp. If Jejia wants to hit or punish me, Jejia, do as you wish. Sanyang, do you think Jejia is an idiot? Jejia Little Red. Little Red is but a level 5 monster beast. If it was it, little. If it, it's really me. Madam, no. Jejia. And Jejia, S. Jejia. Is Jejia. Jejia T. Jejia, Teet. Ju. Jejia. Lu Sanyang was shocked. She quickly stood in front of Lu Yuqin. Lu Yuqin's face turned pale. How could she not know that she was in trouble? However, she didn't do it on purpose. Previously, when she and her mother were collecting those luminous pearls under the sea, a huge red carp suddenly swam over. She was startled and casually slapped it with her palm. Who would have thought that this slap would cause trouble? If she had known, she wouldn't have hurt the red carp. Don't bully my mother. Lu Yuqin was afraid, but she still shouted. I bullied your mother? Madame Hua sneered. She's just a child. Slap her. Yes, madam. The woman who hadn't said a word walked out. In a few steps, she was in front of Lu Sanyang. She stared at her coldly and shouted, Get lost. Lu Sanyang didn't move. She just looked at Madame Hua pleadingly and kept shaking her head. Madame Hua said, Sanyang, you know my temper. If you don't stop me, I'll just teach her a little lesson. If you dare to stop me, then it won't be as simple as just teaching her a lesson. When she said this, Lu Sanyang's expression changed slightly. Still not getting lost. The woman reached out and grabbed Lu Sanyang to the side. Her cultivation was only at the 3rd order Dao Source realm. Although she was much weaker than Lu Sanyang obviously didn't dare to resist. When she was grabbed, she immediately staggered to the side. She looked at Lu Yuqin with tears in her eyes. She knew that her daughter couldn't avoid this beating. Now, she only hoped that Madame Hua would stop while she was ahead. Mother! Lu Yuqin called out softly. The woman raised her hand high, a cold smile on her face. She ruthlessly slapped the face that looked 50 to 60% similar to Lu Sanyang's. Source energy surged in the center of that palm, hiding a killer move. Lu Yuqin's cultivation wasn't high, so how could she block such a blow? If this palm hit, his skin would definitely split open, and his flesh would be torn apart. Lu Sanyang clenched her fists tightly. She didn't even notice that her fingernails were digging into her palms. Her eyes were red, and she forced herself to stay where she was and not rush over. She knew that if she rushed over, then both mother and daughter would probably die here today. Madame Hua definitely wouldn't let the two of them go. If she didn't go over, perhaps her daughter would still have a chance at survival. She turned her head away, unable to bear to watch. Tears flowed down her cheeks. Asterisk pa. Asterisk, a crisp sound rang out. It was followed by a scream. The entire world suddenly quieted down. Lu Sanyang's heart was bleeding, and she felt a throbbing pain. Although she didn't want her daughter to be born, she was still the product of 10 months of pregnancy. She and her daughter had depended on each other for survival these past few years. Her daughter was her lifeline. She couldn't bear to hit her, couldn't bear to scold her, and couldn't even bear to let others touch a single strand of her hair. However, she had been slapped today, and in front of her. She hated her own incompetence, hated Madame Hua's tyrannical and unreasonable behavior, and felt that she was responsible for all of this. Her tears fell to the ground like pearls from a broken necklace. Lu Sanyang turned her head and nervously looked at Lu Yuqin. She was afraid that she would see a scene that she didn't dare to look directly at. An instant later, she suddenly froze. Lu Yuqin was completely unharmed. Although her expression was a little frightened, there were no signs of injury. On the other hand, the woman who had wanted to hit her had a clear handprint on her cheek. Her face was completely red, and a trace of blood was seeping out from the corner of her mouth. This slap was obviously not light, and the woman's cheek quickly swelled up. My daughter is fine, but someone else was hit instead? Lu Sanyang's mind went blank. She didn't know what was going on. The woman who had been hit was obviously stunned as well. She stood there stupidly with a blank look on her face. She didn't know why she was the one who had been hit. Her palm had already landed, but why was she hit instead? Yuan Wu was dumbfounded. Madame Hua and the woman holding the fish tank were also dumbfounded. Everyone was dumbfounded, but soon Madame Hua's face turned gloomy. Her pair of phoenix eyes bloomed with a sinister light as she stared coldly at the young man standing in front of Lu Yuqin, and asked in a deep voice, "Did you do it?" Besides them, there was only this young man and Lu Sanyang, and her mother left. Lu Sanyang and her mother didn't have the ability, so the only explanation was that this young man did it. Madame Hua hadn't looked at Yang Kai since she came here. A trivial first-order Emperor Realm Master wasn't worthy of her attention. Although she also had the same cultivation, on Dragon Island, cultivation wasn't the most important thing. She had an 8th-order Thunder Dragon behind her. Besides the dragon race who dared to provoke her. She didn't expect that this unprepossessing young man would dare to refute her. Hitting her own people was equivalent to slapping her own face. He was simply lawless. Madame Hua's chest was burning with anger. How could she still have a good expression towards Yang Kai? I did it, Yang Kai admitted readily. When Lu Sanyang heard this, she felt grateful and worried for Yang Kai at the same time. She knew that Yang Kai's ability wasn't low. Even Yuan Wu had been taught a lesson by him. But teaching Yuan Wu a lesson was completely different from what happened just now. Teaching Yuan Wu a lesson wasn't a big deal. But offending Madame Hua wasn't a good idea. She was very anxious. Wiping her tears, she hurriedly signaled to Yang Kai with her eyes. Yang Kai turned a deaf ear to her. Waving his hand, he said with a look of disgust, "I didn't want to hit a woman. It's boring. But for a vicious woman like you, it's fine if I hit you. It's just a pity that you've dirtied this young master's hands." What did you say? Madame Hua narrowed her eyes, a cold light shooting out from them. Yang Kai straightened his neck and said, "Are you deaf? Can't you hear what this young master said?" Madame Hua was stunned. Her nose was about to become crooked from anger. "How dare you talk to me like this? How dare you talk to me like this? Who gave you the courage?" On this spiritual island, she was like the mistress. Besides the dragon race, no one could talk to her like this. Madame Hua trembled in anger. Gritting her teeth, she shouted, "Boy, you seek death." Yang Kai snorted and said, That will depend on if you have the ability. Just a plaything of the dragon race. I don't know where your sense of superiority comes from. You make such a big fuss over such a small matter, grumbling for half a day. You dare to be so arrogant in front of this young master. If you speak again, I will beat you as well. This young master doesn't like to hit women, but that doesn't mean I won't. A plaything of the dragon race? Such a small matter? Madame Hua's eyes widened. She laughed in anger. Little Red was injured. This madam just came to seek justice. You dare to injure my people, and dare to talk back to this madam? You have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. So what if a plaything raised by a plaything is injured? Big Sister Lu has already apologized to you. But you still want to bully people like this? Is an apology of any use? Madame Hua's expression was dark. Whatever injury Little Red suffered, this madam will make that little bastard pay in the same way. Lu Yuqing couldn't help but tremble when she heard this. Hong Li's injury wasn't serious. She had only lost 2 fish scales. But if it was her, it would be scraping off a layer of flesh from her back. She was only a teenager, so how could she bear such pain? Her face suddenly turned pale. You are quite good at calculating, Yang Kai sneered. An eye for an eye. It is only right and proper, Madame Hua said coldly, her towering chest rising and falling violently. Obviously, she was very angry with Yang Kai. Yang Kai frowned, pondered for a moment and nodded. Okay, what you said is reasonable. An eye for an eye. It is indeed fair. Lu Sanyang's beautiful face turned pale when she heard this. She thought that Yang Kai couldn't bear Madame Hua's pressure, and was about to compromise. She didn't blame Yang Kai. Yang Kai protecting Lu Yuqing from being injured just now had already made her very grateful. How could she resent him? Compromising at this time was also a wise move. She was just afraid that Madame Hua wouldn't let him off. When the time came, he would definitely be implicated. He secretly made up his mind. No matter how Madame Hua wanted to punish his daughter, he would take her place. He couldn't let his daughter suffer the slightest grievance. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.